bots. It's all
Oh,
bots.
you've been running the channel? Wow. Yeah, and then joining me for the first time is Josh from Red Fury Books. So, hey, Josh, you want to talk about your channel a little bit?
Yeah, so I think what my channel is a little different than a lot is I don't focus on one genre. I read a lot of different genres. Although since I have had a channel, I find myself reading a lot of fantasy, and I think that's just the influence of all the other booktubers. But I generally read 3 to 5 genres a month, and I've read about 110 books so far this year. And I just, like all of you, I love talking about books, and I love talking about the books that I love. So that's what
Oh,
Red Fury Books is. So thanks for having me. This
fantastic.
is gonna be fun.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much, Josh. So, if anybody saw my original thumbnail for tonight, we were going to have Sarah join us from Sarah Reads. And unfortunately, she came down with a terrible virus and is recovering right now. So, we're very sad not to have her, but she will be in a future episode. But we decided to go ahead and continue as planned. And Josh very kindly and generously agreed to step in. And I was excited to have Josh because I've been a huge admirer of his channel since I found out about it this year. And I've been really wanting to talk to you. So, so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
And
Glad to be here.
yeah. And joining me for the first time on my channel, and I was reflecting on this, Jake Bishop. So, Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Just got home. I definitely got here really early with plenty of time to spare because I am a responsible adult. And I did not join this call at 3:58. I basically am mostly fantasy on my channel. I'm like 80-90% fantasy with the remaining like rest being sci-fi. Might introduce a little bit of other stuff and might read some other stuff in 2023, but fantasy is just my favorite genre.
Yeah.
I generally read pretty widely in fantasy, like a lot of different types. I like them dragons, so sticking
Yes,
to it. Lot of
absolutely.
reviews. Hello, everyone. We got a lot of people in the chat. We got Darian here. We got Amanda in here. Got Neetha in here. Glad to be on. This is my first time on this channel, which is weird because I feel like interact a lot in non like talking on voice chat ways. But anyway, it's a thing,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to be here.
I was thinking about that earlier today. I was thinking, I've never been in a discussion with Jake on camera. Like, never. I've never been on a discussion here on my channel with you. I haven't been on your channel. We haven't been on anybody's channel at the same time. And I think that's crazy because I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like we know each other so well.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, we interact quite a bit, just haven't actually talked on any of these. So anyway, first
yeah.
time. Now we won't be able to say that anymore starting today.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy to have you all here. And, I think we have to start with the question, why read? And just to add some context, I always feel like I have to do this. So the why read question is not so much about an origin question of why you started reading in the first place. I feel like that's the Dear Dr. Fantasy sort of angle for his channel and discussions. Here we're talking about why bother to read right now? Like in your life with all you have going on, with having kids in Mike's case, or being an orchestra teacher in Josh's case, and being a full-time student in Jake's case. Why pick up a book? Why read? So, Mike, start us off with that.
Why not? I don't like to answer a question with a question. For me, it was one of those things where I've always read. I mean, since I can remember, really, but it really kind of blew up for me around like 2014, 2015, from going from like 15 books a year to like 50 a year, and now like almost 85-ish a year or something like that. Just I don't know, maybe I just reached that age. You get that age, a certain age where you start being like, oh, everything on TV's crap. Everything, all these new movies are crap. And I just kind of felt like that. I was just like, I feel like I'm just like forcing myself to watch like some mediocre television stuff. So I said, I'm just going to start reading a lot more. And so when everybody always asks me, how do you read so much? It's like, you don't spend all your time on social media or, on the idiot box. And I think that you'll find you have a lot of time to actually read. Plus that combined with young kids when, they're old enough to leave you alone, but they're not quite old enough to be left alone yet. You just sit in the recliner and read something. But I don't really have a reason why you should read, except it's just, it's my primary form of entertainment. I've just always kind of done it.
Yeah. Do your kids ever ask you that? Do they ever? wonder
My
about
oldest got the point now where he started being like, hey, the movie. If there's a movie, why are you reading the book? And I'm like, you'll understand when you're older or whatever. But
that?
if it was on his iPad, he'd probably read it. That's about the only way I'll ever get him to read.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting that you brought up the idiot box idea too, because I know that's an old school way of talking about television. And I mean, I think it does engage your brain a bit more to read a book rather than to passively watch something.
Yeah, the imagination actually gets wheels turn a little bit more than watching someone else's imagination. Believe it or
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. Good way to put it. And, we need to do that as we get older too. So fantastic. And what about you, Josh?
So I'd say for me, skipping the origin story part of it, I mean, as Mike said, I've been a reader my whole life. For me, it's just there's no conscious thought behind it. It's like a lot of the other things that I do. I'm also a runner, and there's no conscious thought. Like 4 or 5 days a week, I just wake up and I go for a run. There's no, okay, am I going to go for a run today? I just go for a run. It's part of what I do. Same thing with my nose in a book. I have a free minute, I pick up a book. I don't turn on the TV. I don't get on the phone for inordinate amounts of time. So it's part of what I do, and it has been for a long time. I think part of it is I read when I was very young because my mother taught me. And in elementary school, I was always in the next class grade above when we did reading time. And I think it was an early source of pride for me. So I think part of that, it just instilled my love for it, because we all know that when we're good at something, we tend to enjoy it a lot more. And it was something I was good at, and I was better at my peers. So it just stuck with me all this time. But yeah, I think that's just the biggest reason. It's just part of me and who I am and my identity at this point in my life.
Wow. That's a really cool answer. Especially the positive reinforcement part, because I think that does go a long way. And it's interesting you bring that up, because I was just thinking recently about, even though I said that this question was focused more on why read now, but, obviously there is a foundation that's built upon why we pick up books now. And I was remembering that when I was younger, there used to be those scholastic book fairs and bookmobiles and book parties. I don't know if any of you grew up in a time where it was like, you get a pizza party if you read so many books. I don't know if anybody
We
grew
had
up.
the Pizza Hut deal where you could do like the trade-in thing with Pizza Hut. You read enough
Yes,
books, you could get like a personal pan pizza or something. It was awesome.
something like that. There was something like that when I was growing up as well. And I think that actually worked against me, because then it was about trying to read as much as possible, as fast as possible, instead of just actually engaging with books. And I found over and over, and I still keep finding this, and this is a hard lesson for me to learn, that in trying to read faster, in trying to get through books, I just work against the quality of my experience just every single time. And that is a good segue to talk and ask Jake this question, because honestly, I don't know of anybody I am more jealous of than Jake, because he can read as quickly as he can. I don't know, Josh, you might actually have some competition there.
I'm actually, in terms of books read, I think Mike's pretty close to me this year, so he's gaining on me, I think.
Yeah, us non-audio people got to stick together,
Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't act like we're pitted against each other. We have to keep them back. So the real answer why I read is that it stops me from going insane and that I enjoy it. But the post hoc justification on why I think other people should read is that I think I think this is even true if you're reading a book that like people would say has no like thematic value. I think it makes people more complete in understanding people, because compared to like when you're watching a movie or a TV show, you're a third person observer. When you're reading a book, you're really like seeing the world from someone else's perspective. To some degree, the author, and to some degree, the character, depending on what's going on. And I don't think it's just an opportunity. You're never going to get to that experience, and you won't be able to see the world from that many perspectives if you're not reading books from other people's point of view. And I think being able to understand other people's experience in life, how they see the world, the struggles they face, and even the flaws they have can help be very beneficial as a person. And I mean, I feel like I've noticed that like there's like, you know, people will be like thinking away, and I can be like, that's I think like that's a mistake. And I think just reading from other people's point of views helps you identify both like morally bad things that might go on in your head and practically bad things that might go on in your head. Even if it's like, you know, even popcorn novels. I firmly believe that someone who reads a bunch of popcorn, like, no, like, you know, if you put it in a university, everyone would be like, this has got nothing going on thematically. I think it would make them a more complete and understanding person compared to watching like movies and TV, or someone who doesn't.
I completely agree. Does anybody want to respond to that? Mike or Josh?
No, I feel
my,
like
my answer seems pretty lame now. That's all I'm going to say. So.
What did you say?
But again, that's the post hoc reason. The real reason I read is because it's fun, and if I don't, I'll go insane. So there you go. That was just a happy upside that came about.
Man, Alan chose violence tonight. Jeez.
Yeah, Alan really woke up this morning and chose violence. That's okay though. His violence is entertaining.
He's always accusing me of being in a secret chat with other people, but here, I'm right here in the open.
I mean, crazy idea.
Yeah, no, I think you're right though, Jake, that even though, you know, it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fun to pick up a book, but you're right that it does offer perspectives that maybe you wouldn't get any other way, even for, like you said, a popcorn read. And I'm just thinking back on, you know, I don't know why, but this came to mind, like Conan stories, because I think at one point those were considered the popcorn reads of the time and things that came up in literary magazines. And, you know, those were just kind of fun reads that people would go through. And at the same time, you look at them now and it's like, wow, there's so much thematic value, and look what he was doing with this and this. And there's just so many ways to pick apart the story and see so many things happening.
I also think it's why the most common like reason people enjoy books is the characters, because I think one of the most like fundamentally important parts of reading is seeing the world from other characters. And like, if the characters aren't interesting, you don't have that. So I think that's kind of why I'm on team character first. Yeah,
fantastic. What about you all? How do you feel about characters? Is that something? I think I've heard you before, Mike. You've talked about how characters essential for you.
Yeah, here, let me make Jake extremely happy here. So I'm reading Live Ship Traders right now, and this might be the most character-driven trilogy I've ever read, like ever. It's rather impressive, really, when you consider how much stuff I've actually read. So, yeah, obviously with me, it's like, sure, I love a nice world. I love a good writing style. But if I don't care about your characters, I don't care about your story. So with me, if I like your characters, I'm probably going to end up liking your world, you know, and even if you're not the greatest writer per se, I'm still probably going to enjoy your story. So, yeah, definitely characters over everything else. Because like I said, don't care about the characters, and I don't care when anything bad happens to them.
Yeah. Although sometimes some authors can make settings characters in themselves. I felt that way with Salem's Lot, for example, by Stephen King. I felt like he made that whole entire town a character in itself.
No, that's my favorites right there. So yeah, of course.
And I don't want to be like, you know, all like only character, because, you know, I love me a good plot. I love me a good world. I love me some good themes. I love me some good prose. I love me some good action. But I think a novel with amazing characterization and mediocre everything else is a really good novel. And a novel with amazing of any of those things and then mediocre everything else is a mediocre novel. Now, that being said, it's hard to think of an example of someone who's like really, really good at characterization and does like everything else badly, because ultimately, like, I phrase it like that for convenience, but the aspects work together. Like, if you really understand your characters, like, they're going to act in a way that makes sense, which might make the plot more interesting, and like themes will come from them all acting like people, but hypothetically.
Oh yeah.
No, I think you're right, Jake. The characters can drive everything. But there are some great stories I've read. I've gone through different phases of my reading through my life, and I went through a big thriller and mystery phase for a while. And I did read quite a few authors that character took a back seat, but they were so well plotted that I was okay with it. But I didn't connect as much with those authors as the ones like, you know, Connolly or Lehane or whatever, who can do the great plotting and have the great characters drive the story. So But yeah, you're right. I mean, to bring up Hobb, which we should always bring up Hobb.
It was going to come up inevitably in this discussion.
Yeah,
Like,
he
one of
tweeted me
my-
yesterday that Robin Hobb is what made him someone's finally supplant Stephen King, and I'm like, wow, okay. Damn.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's one of the questions I'm trying to answer for myself right now. I mean, Stephen King's been my favorite author for 30 years, as long as I can remember having a favorite author. And right now, Hobbs in the question. I mean, she's in the equation, and part of it is her characters. I mean, there's a part, not to do any spoilers or anything, but you'll get to it soon, Mike, and I know Jake will know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a book where for 200 pages, nothing that happens in the plot, and it's all character. And it may be 200 of my most favorite pages in the entire realm of the Elderlings. It's just absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, yes, I think character is first and foremost for me as well, because that's what we remember. I mean, that's why I love King. That's why I love Hobb, Abercrombie. I mean, all the greats. And I got to thank Mike in person for Abercrombie, because I never read him until I heard him continuously singing his praises. And, you know, he's a top 3 author right now for me. So
one of my favorite things ever is that not only did I get people to read that, but it wasn't just me. People really did like it. You know, because I was like, it seems to get people to try something, but you know, look at my success with Red Rising. It's hit or miss. You know, some people love it. Some people are like, I don't see what you see. But it's just about, I mean, I'd say 99 out of 100 people are like, yeah, First Law was great. Thank you for recommending that. So, yeah, that makes me happy.
That's amazing. I think I found out about First Law oddly through local friends, and that almost never happens for any book or series. But I have some friends who live here where I live, and they were talking about Abercrombie and how hilarious he was and how amazing he was. Yeah, but we have to talk about Hobb because okay, so for one thing, Mike,
no spoilers.
I'm behind all of you all. I've only read the Farseer trilogy.
Oh, okay.
But Mike has decided that he's going to take on all of the Realm of the Elderlings in 2023. We made a big announcement video.
Well, I'd like to finish it by then, and I think having Philip there, because Philip's going to be like me. I think he's only read about as far as I'm about to finish here. And then he and I are going to, because he's on the panel, you know, we can kind of encourage each other to keep going. So my plan is like at this time next year to be done with it. But, you know, it's not a hard schedule or anything. But right now it's like, well, damn, it's going to be hard waiting until January to get the Tawny Man as much as I'm liking this. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing, by the way, because, you know, we were just talking about how you've influenced a bunch of people to read Abercrombie. But I think it's pretty cool that you've allowed people to influence you with Hobb, because I know you were not the biggest fan after finishing Farseer. It took a lot of
I really got this reputation as someone who hated that trilogy. And I'm like, guys, I reviewed all 3 of those, and the first 2 were glowing. I mean, you guys were only paying attention to the ending here, you know? So I don't know.
You did tease the heck out of me, Mike. You did.
It wasn't a thing where I was like, oh, I'm just done with Hobb. And I was just like, when I scheduled, I said, I'm only scheduling just this right now because we were doing the Malazan thing. We had so much other plans and stuff. So that's really what the deal was with it there. But I had always planned to get to this. I actually planned to get to this over the summer. But famously, Jake, I got to bring it up. he made me decide to read Greenbone instead. So
no, that was by accident.
By accident.
Yeah, well, he asked me, you know, I was on Talking About Nothing, and apparently my pitch for Greenbone was just better than my pitch for Live Ship. And he's like, oh, we got to move up Greenbone. And so then he moved Live Ship down the TBR for Greenbone. And on one hand, I'm glad Mike liked Greenbone. I really like Greenbone. But Live Ship Traders is like, you know, my favorite collection of words ever. So I was kind of like, no. I'm sorry, Derry. I failed you all, okay? Except Fondly.
Wait, what happened? What is he responding to? Did she say?
She said, how dare me, because I delayed Mike reading Live Ship. But I failed everyone except Fondly. But Fondly worked out well for Fondly. So you're welcome, Fondly, and I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah, she's getting to talk to her. That was awesome. She's an awesome person.
Alan is still trolling and has now gone so far as to give Discworld 1 star. No, Night Eyes isn't in Assassin's Apprentice. He's lying, okay?
He has not read Assassin's Apprentice.
Yeah, and he went down.
Is he drinking right now? I'm reading. Is he drinking?
Why is he lying in my chat? How dare you, Alan?
Alan is going on a warpath. and he's willing to basically take himself out in order to take others out. If you bring up the comment, he goes, Discworld, 1 star. That's how far he's going on this warpath.
Oh, wow.
Can we
Love
actually just
Discworld?
leave the Discworld 1 star comment up for like the entire video, please? And just everyone can bring
I
that
could
up down
find
forever.
it. If I could find it, I will.
It's a
I'm
few-
lost in the chat now.
I've heard
Is
you
this
could
it?
skip live ship
Discworld
traders.
1 star.
There we go.
Okay, we'll just leave that up. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm so behind in the chat now.
That's probably the series I get the most from people that I need to read. That every time I do like a new series, I'm going to pick up. Everyone is mad that I don't include Discworld. So
Have you
It'll
read
happen
any
eventually, guys.
Discworld? Or
never had.
yeah, it's fun. I've only read two.
Well, I was like, I don't want to read like a 40-book series, and then I started Drist, and people were like flipping tables over it. So.
They're more like I don't think you have to read them.
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
Yeah, you could read them like standalones.
Mm.
Yeah. So okay. So Josh, tell us why you love Robin Hobb. Since did you finish it? Did you finish the Realm
I
of the
did. I
Elderlings?
finished last week, and honestly, I'm still reeling a little bit. The penultimate chapter was just so powerful that the last chapter was 3 pages, and it took me about a half hour to get through it because I just couldn't focus. It's just remarkable. She's just so good at character, and especially, I mean, it's not a spoiler, but you see Fitz in 9 books, and I know this character better than anything I've ever read, and I feel what he feels and just know him so keenly. And when you see where this journey goes at the end of this Realm of the Elderlings, it was just so emotional and so absolutely gratifying. That's why I'm really excited, Mike, for you to read it, because I know you have such a large audience, and I know that you're going to influence a lot of people to read it. And I mean, that's what we always want to do. I'm sure a lot of people, because I know your tastes, seeing what you talk about, you know, your character first, you love Stephen King. You're going to love it. You may not love all of it, but you're going to love the whole trajectory of the series. And I think that's probably going to help a lot of us read Robin Hobb even more. So I'm
Exciting
really
was seeing Madison on my Discord she was like, oh, I'm just going to read like the next one. And she just all of a sudden she was just like burning through it. And she posted a picture when she finished the last one, and like her eyes were like swollen, like she just got in a fight with Mike Tyson. She had cried so hard. It's like, geez, I don't know if I want to get into this, but I want to get into this. I'm ready to be hurt again, you know? So.
Yeah, Josh, you said you're reeling after a week. Don't worry, I'm still reeling after like a year and a half. So, you know, you still got plenty of time to go.
Wow.
That book is so good. I think the penultimate chapter of that book is like my favorite chapter.
it's unbelievable. It's so good.
I
Like
think the
Derry
last
said in
thing
the
that
chat,
hit me like that was just finishing Wheel of Time, I think, you know, because I had spent so much time with those characters. So when I was it wasn't like what was happening on the page was actually emotional. It was just like, I've only got 30 pages of this left, you know, and that's when it really hit me. And it was hard to finish those last few pages because for whatever reason, I couldn't see. It was weird.
So Derry's doing the strategy of just like when you're drunk and you're worried about the hangover, so you just keep drinking. but with Robin Hobb, it's working. So
you can hear the dog, just keep going, you know.
Now, Derry, you're right about the hangover, because I've been reading the same little 300-page book for like 6 days now, and I haven't finished it because it's not Hobb, and I'm not compelled.
The last book that did that to me was Dead House Gates, Malazan.
Oh, really?
We're like for 3 months after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Now, unfortunately for me, it never hit that emotional high again. I actually liked the book in the series better than that one, but it never hit that emotional high for me again like that.
Yeah, that book actually had a very similar effect on me. Well, actually, it was very strange because I read Dead House Gates and I didn't quite have. I loved the ending, but the whole book, the book as a whole, didn't quite. I don't know. I struggled with it. I'll be honest. And then 6 months later, I started thinking about it again. I think part of that was Alan's review. Alan did a fantastic review of Dead House Gates back then. And I watched that and I thought, I cannot stop thinking about this book now. I could not stop thinking about the characters, what happened, especially what happens at the end. No spoilers. Josh is going to read that next year. But yeah, it's a powerful book.
Josh, you aren't doing that crazy 1 per month thing they're doing over at Andrew's place, are you?
No, my cohort is starting in January. And we're going to do the first 2 months, and then we're just going to evaluate month by month to see how we do it.
What I told him was, I was like, no one asked my opinion, but I'm just saying that if you try to do 1 per month with Malazan, you might end up hate reading it by the end. I would not recommend. Take breaks, man. Take breaks.
I read all 10 back to back.
Well, you're nuts though. I mean, you're certifiable, man.
That's true. I mean, I did say at the beginning that I read to not go insane. So the implication is
I read the
everyone's
last
a little
three
bit
back to back.
insane.
Yeah.
Someone raise your hand who's not at least a little bit insane. Like, come on. There we go.
I'm a little bit insane.
Yeah, everyone's a little bit insane in their own unique way. That's how it works.
Oh yeah. I'm really curious. Any plans when you're going to start again, Mike?
I just always say when it feels right, you know. I know that makes everybody think that I'm just like never going to go back to it, and I'm like, guys, I would tell you flat out. I just put out a video recently saying, here's series I'm never going to finish, and I would have put Malazan on there. I'm not scared of doing that.
Also, to be fair, people thought the same thing about Realm of the Elderlings. People like, oh no, he's actually, and look, see what happened.
Yeah, and Wheel of Time, I took 6-month break right when this channel was first getting going, based off of the Wheel of Time stuff. So that was like, okay, I should keep riding that wave, right? But I didn't. To me, it's if you end up forcing something like that, I just feel like you'll end up just being where you just feel like it's a chore that you got to get done. And when I was reading Toll the Hounds, I was like, something just doesn't feel right now. And I know Alan, and this is what me and Alan have had, like, so far have had the exact same opinions in all the Malazan books. So he's telling me that Toll the Hounds is this much of a struggle. I believe it, but yeah, I will get back to it. But right now, all I can think about is I had my plans. I planned 6 months in a rough draft. Nobody getting crazy with 6 months, but I will actually like make a plan ahead. I scrapped all of that the other day, because I was like, I want to make sure that I leave room open to do Realm of the Elderlings. If I decide to just completely blow through it, I want to make sure that I leave room for it. So
I think the theory is we need to have symmetry. So there's one book Alan really likes that you don't, which is House of Chains. And so we need the one book that you really like that Alan doesn't. And he likes Dust of Dreams and The Crippled God, which means it has to be Toll the Hounds. It's just math. That's how it works.
Yikes. Toll the Hounds, I will say this. Toll the Hounds was a very complicated book for me.
I think
I've never had more mixed feelings about a book than I did about Toll the Hounds. I'll just say that. I really
Malazan book, like the first third of it, I'm mad because he's introduced a whole new cast again and locations again. I'm just pissed off. And then the middle half, I'm like, okay, this is getting actually pretty good. And then the ends are always like awesome. With Reaper's Gale, it was like the complete opposite. Wow, half these characters you just introduced kind of crappy, and then the ending was like, huh. So yeah, I think it broke me a little bit.
I don't think I would describe it as mid.
Well, Alan, again, like Alan is on a warpath. We can just dismiss everything Alan is typing right now.
Krupp is the worst, Kevin. Krupp is the worst. When he's on the page, I just want to skip it. That's
okay. We might have
problems. Okay, I'd like to retract what I said about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. I do think that there's a good chance that Josh will like Malazan, except that you said that you don't like military fantasy, and then I thought, well,
oh boy,
I don't know.
Well, the good news about Toll the Hounds is Toll the Hounds is the least military fantasy, which is why I actually think it's Alan's least favorite.
Actually, I would think Midnight Tides is the least military.
Maybe.
Well,
but I think there are a couple like army versus army confrontations in Midnight Tides. I can't really think of any in Toll the Hounds. But that'd be a good shot. I'm sticking with this here. I don't care if it's right. This is me just explaining it away.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm sorry, Josh. You're just
it actually came up, that video that you had with the panel discussion with Philip and Jimmy, and I remember very distinctly at one point of the video, and it helped actually reassure me, is because Alan talked about how he loved all the military aspect, and then Brittany immediately said, "Oh, I didn't like all that, but here's what I liked." So it made me feel like, okay, even if military fantasy isn't my favorite subgenre, there's still going to be a lot in there that I'm going to enjoy. So hopefully,
besides Dark Tower, is probably the most multi-genre anything I can imagine, for sure.
Yeah, this is why, like, in all the threads where people are like, "Can you recommend a series with like this hyper specific thing?" It's just all Malazan, because Malazan just has everything somewhere. Yeah. Like, it might not be prominent, But if you
You
name a
recommend
thing,
book where the guy used to be a plumber, but now he decided to join the army, but he only
Yeah.
has one leg. It's like, what?
yeah, I don't remember which character that is, but that's definitely a character in
No, that's
Book of the
what
Fallen.
Reddit threads are all like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, how are you getting this specific? I feel like you guys are just trolling at this point.
That character is totally in Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Probably.
I promise. Everything is in Malazan Book of the Fallen.
No, Alan, you were in that discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say Alan was in that
You
video.
were in that video. You can't say I was having a secret panel without you that time.
Also,
And I had
Alan,
a-
you were on the first Why Read. Get out of here.
I
I'm
know,
convinced
he was in
Philip
the
is
first one
cloned
we-
himself.
Every time I'm with Alan, he's like, "You're having a secret discussion with AP and Philip and Jimmy." Every
I don't
single
know how
time.
Philip has so much time to have a real job, have kids, put like 5 videos a week up, and he's on like every other channel having a 3-hour discussion. Man, that guy's a clone. He's got to have a clone. for
Philip's
sure.
just built different. I don't know what to
I
tell you.
guess so. It's a machine, man.
I know. Yeah. I did have a very fun discussion. I actually told the hounds, though, I have to say, I have never enjoyed talking about a book more than Told the Hounds, though. I know it's like I had a crazy
No, I'm
relationship
laughing at Alan. I'm
with it,
sorry. Sorry.
but I loved it. Yeah. Well.
See,
He's trolling himself. I
He's literally
love it.
he's so much on the warpath that he's taking himself out.
I know
That's-
he's taking himself down. Too.
He's going full mutually assured destruction. It's chaos over in his Discord today. I'm telling you.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm convinced he's drinking. He's probably grading papers and drinking right now. Yeah.
And let's see what else. Oh, I wanted to bring up Mike's amazing video that he dropped today. About
Amazing. Wow. Thank you.
books
Jeez.
at once. We kind of talked about it briefly right before going live, but I don't know. Actually, Jake, do you read multiple books at once?
Typically, I read one. Every once in a while, I read multiple at once, but it's just like for practical reasons. Like when I was reading the Book of Earthsea, I have like the massive hardback, and I'm like, I am not taking this on the bus. So I ended up reading multiple at once. There's also just some like Book of the New Sun. I was like, okay, we're not binging this. We'll read a little bit a day. When I was
Go
reading
binge
Lord of the Rings-
Malazan, but not Book of the New Sun. People are like, hey, why don't you have Book of the New Sun on the schedule?
I mean, I
harder
probably
for you?
could have binged Book of the New Sun, if we're being honest, but I chose not to. It's a lot shorter than Malazan, so I was like, if I did a chapter a day for Malazan, I'd be reading it for way too long.
Hey,
Even though those
question. Am I the
chapters
only
are
one who
so
still
long.
says Malazan?
No, but I don't know. I've trained myself to make Malazan the way I automatically say it. So.
Malazan, Malizane. Yeah.
Used to not care, and then I saw the explanation why, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. And now if I say Malazan, it's like, if I was like Roma in Empire, like Book of the Fallen or something. It's like it's the empire surrounding Malaz, so it's the Malaz
Right.
in Empire.
Malaz.
So
yeah.
I don't care. I don't do audio. I say things wrong all the time. So
yeah, I
if I
can't
got
get away
mad
with
at
that
people
series.
for saying things wrong, I'd be in trouble. No, it isn't, Alan. Try thinking about it better.
Alan, that's the explanation that Stephen Erickson has given. Anyway. Oh, we're just gonna laugh at Alan the whole time.
That is why
Yeah.
Reed is now why laugh at Alan.
But that, yeah, I know. But that makes what is we were just talking about this. I did actually do a video on my channel about a year ago, I think, maybe longer ago, about trying to read multiple books at once. And at the time, I was reading The Bone Hunters, which is book 6 in Malazan Book of the Fallen, and trying to read, I think, Red Rising book 5.
That's a good balance.
And I thought that was a good mix because it's sci-fi and Malazan.
These people are like, oh, I'm reading Wheel of Time and Malazan at the same time. You're
Ugh.
fucking insane.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for burnout, in my opinion.
Yeah. You're not going to finish either.
Well,
I won't judge people for their own brand of insanity. I read all of Malazan straight. I would fail if I did that. If I tried to read Wheel of Time and Malazan at the same time, I'd be like, I'd be reading Malazan and be like, oh no, what if like the Aes Sedai do this? No, that's Wheel of Time. What's going on? And I get it
I
all
always
mixed
like
up.
to try to do, like, if I'm reading fantasy, try to get a horror book or a sci-fi book or a thriller or something to kind of balance it out. If I try to do 2 epic fantasy at the same time, it's just all going to bleed together. Can't do it.
oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I say as I'm reading Brian Lee Durfee's new book and Realm of the Elderlings at the same time. I say,
Okay.
I say
Rules
this.
are broken.
You
I think
need to
it's
tell me.
life ship doesn't feel like fantasy to me. I know it's got talking boats and shit, but it feels like a family drama to me. I don't know. I don't really get like swords and shields epic fantasy out of it. You know?
Is
Does
it
that make
because
sense?
there's like 6 pages of action in the entire trilogy
Oh, sure.
combined?
Sure.
Wait, are you talking about Hob or are you talking
Live
about
Ship. No,
Oh,
Brian
Live
Lee
Ship.
Durfee has much more than 6 pages of action in,
Oh,
in his book.
no, his
Um,
is like John Gwynn. If you like John Gwynn, I think that the Durfee books
Um,
really, really hit well
but yeah,
for you. It's just
Live Ship, like
rapid
the first
pace.
action scene is on like page 400 and it's like half a page long, and then there's like another page and a half of action. Like,
Yeah, I talked about
first
Ship
book.
of Magic. I was like, yeah, there's like 2 action scenes the entire book, and they're like,
Yeah.
the book that thick? Like, yeah, it's not why
I
I'm
mean,
reading.
there's literally a Hob scene where like Hob fades to black for like a battle. Literally, it's like there's going to be a battle, and I think she was just like, "Oh, I don't think this battle contributes anything to the characters or plot or world." So it's just, next chapter, it happened, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I didn't care about that battle, so I'm okay with this." Like,
That's
Well-
the Tolkien style. Tolkien would be
Yeah.
like, and then they fought. And then
I
you
feel like
didn't even talk about the grass over here, for a
Yeah.
minute.
I don't
God
know how
bless
you all are about action scenes. I feel like I'm kind of a granny in that I like boring books. I like slow burn books compared to most readers these days, I think.
I'm
I don't
kind of mixed. I feel like some authors are just great at nonstop, like Pierce Brown. His books somehow are nonstop action, and I don't get exhausted. Other authors try to do it so much. I'm just like, dude, can you take a breath for a second? Because I'm tired of this describing this battle sequence over and over and over and over and over again. But I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on it. Sometimes I'm just like, can we I don't know, talk to each other? Some characters talk to each other instead of everybody just stabbing each other all the time, just so I get to know them before, they get stabbed and I give a shit, but
so
I was
I like
thinking
action,
brain.
but I think action should also I think lots of things can be accomplished in action. I think if you have an action scene where the entire point of the action scene was just that people fought, I don't think it was good. I think action should add to character or plot or setting or something else, just like any other scene that exists. So I think lots of authors, and I think they're usually the authors that are considered like good action scene writers, are the ones who manage to have it be like contribute to the story. Like the details of the action scene actually are important to the story. If you were to just skip it, it would like cause plot issues, and also they make it feel intense. This is why some authors can write, I think, like a ton of action, but also you end up caring about the characters. But once things start if you just have 2 pages and it's 2 pages about like the details of how the swords went together and sword fighting technique, I'm just like, yeah, I don't care. Go like Tolkien. Aragorn's sword sang. Legolas shot some fools. Gimli was cool as well. We're moving on.
Yeah.
That is a really cool insight, Jake. I like that. I love battle scenes, by the way. I know I say that, but I do love battle scenes. Like
It depends on the author for me. There's some who do it, and I'm
Same.
just like, get on with it, man.
so I totally disagree with Derry here.
Me too. I
And-
thought Cornwell's battle scenes were
Oh
excellent.
my
Wow.
goodness, I loved his battle scenes so much.
I mean, I've only read the Arthur books, but
Yeah, me too. I've only read the
but I love
Warlord
them.
Chronicles.
They're equally good. I've read like a dozen of his now, and I mean that's just one of his fortes. I agree as well. I think he's the best. I think Abercrombie is maybe my second best. I just love how
I
he
made that comparison, saying that I think that this is the first person besides Abercrombie that can make a duel in the circles exciting.
yes,
definitely,
and
definitely.
it's still like everything Abercrombie does. It's character focused, and I don't know how you make a battle scene character focused, but somehow he pulls it off.
I think it's like
Remarkable.
I think the battles that aren't character focused have kind of not used the medium well. Books have a lot of disadvantages when it comes to action compared to like TV, but they basically have 2 really big advantages. And the first is we can see the internal thoughts of the character, which I think is a pretty huge advantage. And 2, everything, there's no budget restraints. Burning down the city costs just as much as not burning down the city.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, the main one, so I think a battle scene that isn't important for like characters growth and doesn't use the fact that we have access to the thoughts. I'm like, okay, like I feel like it didn't use its medium as well. And it would and I think, because the thing is, I actually like a really good book action scene more than like a good TV show action scene. but I'm not going to like it more if it doesn't, if like the character's internal thoughts didn't play a role, because then it would have been just been better if it was a TV show.
I totally agree with you, actually. I actually much prefer action scenes in books than I do in shows, which is crazy. But no, I do love a good battle scene. And I think you're right. And actually, I have a friend, Christian. He hasn't been putting out content lately, but he was going to do a video, and he never did, but he was going to do a video about Abercrombie's action scenes in Best Served Cold, and the way that Abercrombie was able to take one battle and make it really dark and uncomfortable, and then he took another battle scene and brought out comic elements and made it funny. And it's like Abercrombie can do that. It's like he shows range not just with his characters, but with his battle scenes, he's able to show range.
No one can make a character shitting himself as funny as Joe Abercrombie.
Right? I always say that I feel like Abercrombie is a master when it comes to simile. Like some of his similes, I think that's what makes him so funny to me, is some of his similes are just hilarious. Like something about, there was a few in Best Served Cold or in The Heroes. It were just, oh man, just had me on the floor laughing.
I think so much of it too is, I mean, I've seen him interviewed, like Mike's channel and a lot of other channels, and he's a genuinely very funny guy. I think a lot of times I often as a reader read humor as false because it just seems like it's just too clever. But with, I don't know, with Abercrombie, it just seems like so rooted with the character. I mean, all of Logan's little witticisms, and it just seems, again, with Joe, everything is character. So all the similes and all of that. I mean, it's focused on, I firmly believe, I've heard that cliche so often with authors that, oh, I just create the characters, then I watch and see what happens. I really feel that with an Abercrombie book, because a lot of times you'll get like maybe this out of nowhere plot twist, but then you think about it and it's driven 100% by a character's motivations. It's not serving the plot, it's serving the character. And I think it's so brilliant. And that's just one of the reasons I love him as an author, because everything is just all about that character and how their motivations influence the story.
It seems like any other author tried to do that, it would just be like an MCU joke or something where it's just like, no one would say that in this situation, but for some reason he's able to say the most outlandish shit in a very serious situation and it lands. It's weird.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting. Somebody was commenting on a video. I don't remember what video they commented today on one of my videos about how they see themselves not so much as character focused or plot focused, but prose focused. Like the prose is most important. And I was thinking about it, and this is probably influenced by a lot of AP's videos have been making me think about this a lot. Phillips as well. But if you think about it, the prose, I feel like maybe you could separate plot from prose, perhaps. I'm sure Jake can think of an exception to that because you're so good at thinking through that sort of line of thinking. But I feel like character is accomplished a lot through the prose, and theme, subtext. There's so much that's accomplished through the prose that I feel like I can't really separate the two.
Yeah, and before I say what I'm about to, I'd like to preface that I'm aware of the irony that I have versus videos that I have no literary merit and they're just for fun, where I compare things specifically on split up aspects like characterization, plot, world. We split things up as reviewers just for practicality, like to talk about things. They're generally like it's all one big thing. Like you can't actually be like, oh yeah, just like the characters are good, completely unconnected to everything else. Or that's like true of almost all the aspects. I think like, everything, prose, action, character, plot, theme. I'm sure there are examples where like the prose is directly relevant to plot. Book of the New Sun comes to mind, where it's like he hides plot details using his writing. Actually, a lot of the time, like setup, a lot of really good authors who are good at like plot twists, it's because they set things up without you noticing that they're setting it up. So you read something and you're like, that's payoff. And then like 200 pages later, it's like, oh, it was also set up. And I think that like word choice ends up being really important there. But it's all connected. And those videos of mine are not valid. And you should probably all not click the like button.
They're really good.
I like making them, but I also am totally aware that the entire premise doesn't actually make sense. But whatever.
Go ahead, Boo. What were you going to say? Weren't you going to say something in addition to that? No?
What?
I thought you were gonna. I thought that was all a preface to something else.
Oh no, so the preface was just to that, like, they're all connected. Like, you can't actually like isolate the elements because like how they connect, and it's all the one story thing. And we try and isolate just because it's a lot easier. Like, it's hard to review a book coherently, and it's a lot easier if you like split it up. But like, and Philip has said this, and it's like you said, absolutely. Like, you know, prose is like writing style ability, and like one of the reasons Abercrombie's characters are really good is because his prose is really good, and his ability at like voice.
Well, you know, and I think there's nothing wrong with trying to understand a book by separating its parts in that way. I mean, kind of like, I'm sure Josh, right? When you're teaching music education, there's some value in teaching music in its separate parts. But at the same time, they all work together.
Yeah, I guess probably it's like, it's fine to, I just have to try and always keep in the back of my mind, like, these things are all informing each other.
Yeah.
Which I imagine is true for a lot of things, not just reading.
Yeah. That's why the whole Cawpile rating system kind of doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that's why, even though I like spreadsheets, I'm an insane person. I use decimals to rate books. I'm fully aware this makes me a crazy person. I don't like the Cawpile thing where like I rate each aspect individually and it adds up to a total. For that reason, and also like it depends on the books for what's important. Like, I don't think the thematic elements is that important to like Project Hail Mary. But like the thematic element's pretty damn important for Toll the Hounds. So it feels weird for like theme to be weighted the same for Toll the Hounds and Project Hail Mary. And I picked those two books because I love both. Like, I think both are wonderful. But like, I'm enjoying them in very different ways. So anyways, I don't really like the Cawpile thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said the word Project Hail Mary. It makes me think of a lot of people on BookTube I've noticed use the word project, the project of the book, which is kind of like another way of, I think, of saying the narrative focus, the intention the author's going for with the narrative. And different authors, even in fantasy, are going for different projects with their books. So what Hobb is trying to do in Live Ship Traders is probably a different project, a different intention than what Abercrombie's trying to do in a First Law book, for example. So I think that it's important to take that into consideration too. Like, what is the author going for here? Because I hear people say that. Like, I even heard a booktuber, for example, recently outside this corner of BookTube, but they read First Law and they said, my problem is the magic was never explained.
Good.
I know.
I think this is just people that are such big Brandon Sanderson fans now that if your magic isn't a character, they think it's a detraction to the story. And like I've always said, maybe it's because I grew up on Lord of the Rings. It's like, why can Gandalf do magic? Because he's a wizard. That's why he can do magic. I'm good. I don't need to know the science of it.
The ironic thing is, like, the point of like Brandon when he has like his law of magic is not that magic should not be explained. Like, the point is that like magic, hard magic and soft magic are different tools. Use the right one. First Law uses the right tool. Like, I like the magic stuff is not a big reason why I like First Law, and it is a big reason why I like Mistborn. But if you made Baez a Mistborn, First Law would be worse, like a lot worse. Because like that's not the tool he's trying to do. That's like when I get asked like, what's better, hard magic or soft magic? I think this was on a thing, and my answer was like, that's like asking what's a better tool, a hammer or a screwdriver. It's like, what are we trying to do? Like, neither is better, but for some things, like, one of them will accomplish it much more. Are you trying to have like a really clever problem solving scene that's like really satisfying? Yeah, soft magic probably isn't going to work very well for that, because you're just going to be like, and then the wizard saved it, which isn't very satisfying. Are you trying to make like this thing, this otherworldly aspect that the main characters don't understand and are terrified by due to their lack of understanding? Yeah, you probably don't want them to understand it very well. Like, anyway, I hate how people.
If you tell me how the sausage
the
is
laws
made,
of
I'm not
magic
interested anymore. Yeah.
to like do this, it drives me slightly insane, which is why I read books, to not go insane. So this is counterproductive.
Yeah,
I totally
clearly working.
I totally want to see a fanfic of someone writing Baez as a Mistborn.
No, don't do it.
No,
Oh, that would be great.
But
no.
I'm fully convinced, like when people say this is like the best, their favorite magic systems are the most like not judged in isolation aspect. Like magic systems in isolation, if you're separate from the story, they're not good or bad. Like all the ones that are considered like really good and are really popular, it's because they fit their story super well. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
my
Beautifully said. Yeah, I totally agree.
Andrew's oversharing again.
Yeah.
Love you, buddy. I'm not the one to ask about the pros thing because apparently it's like when someone says, "Hey, man, God, that rock band is like Nickelback's terrible." I'm like, sounds like about 12 other rock bands that you guys love. So I'll be reading like a book and be like, I don't have any problem with writing. Some people, oh, you're a terrible writer. Guess I didn't really notice. Now I can notice when someone is an exquisite writer like Robin Hobb or Tad Williams or George R. R. Martin. I can look, I'm like, wow, that's a beautifully crafted line. But the people that are just straight up like prose snobs, I don't get it. Give me good characters and your prose can suffer, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's just a me thing.
You know, I think the thing with prose, I have gotten better at noticing when prose takes me out of a story, like when something just, I don't know, seems a little clunky or weird. But I think the thing with prose that makes it so difficult to evaluate is that you only get one version at the end of the day. And so at some, like you said, it's really easy, like with the Tad Williams, for example, I haven't read Tad Williams yet, but it's probably easy with Robin Hobb or somebody to see how the prose is adding so much to the story. But the challenge is if you have somebody who has maybe less than great prose and you only get their version of the story one way, you never see a version where the prose has been edited and it's better, and get to see how that affects your experience with the prose being better. Does that make sense? So it's hard to evaluate prose in a way because you're only getting one version too. You don't really have something to compare it to.
And I think it's obviously highly subjective. You know, prose, like someone said it in the chat, prose for one person is going to be amazing. For the next person, it might not land, you know? So it
That's
really kind of depends
true.
on you, I think. But I mean, like I said, you can look at someone like Tad Williams and be like, yeah, that's a beautifully crafted sentence right there. I would have never thought to say that. And I found myself even on the Discord, just like straight up just copying and pasting from my Kindle some of these Robin Hobb lines. I'm just like, wow, I wouldn't have even thought to word it that way. That's incredible. So obviously, I think she might have a career, you guys. She might have a future.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you speak without giving away spoilers? What it was that made you, like, especially with Live Ship, what made you completely love Robin Hobb or have a complete shift with her?
Not a good
Yes, for me?
He likes
Yeah.
first.
I mean, with me, it's always. I don't want to just sound like a broken record, say it's about the characters, but with this, it's like she is able to take these characters in a fantasy setting and make me not care that there's talking ships, make me not care that there's dragons or maybe serpents in the water. I haven't really got a really clear understanding of it yet. I don't care about all that. All I care about is this family drama that's going on. These people are acting the way, you know how you act like around like a coworker or something. You might have like a disagreement and you're like, shit, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. With family, it seems like you've got no problem being ugly, letting your ugly side show with family, and then later on being like, yeah, I should have done that, you know. But you know what? You got to live together, so deal with it. You know, I feel like she's able to capture that, show how family members can be just kind of reprehensible towards one another. They love each other, but they will obviously let the warts kind of show a lot more than they will with just like the general person. So she puts the focus so much on just this family and what they're going through that I was immediately sucked into Ship of Magic because of what was going on with that family. There's disagreements. There's, you know, a death in the family. And just whenever there's a death in the family, things are always going to be ugly and people are going to be emotional and stuff. And there's going to be things that are said that can't be taken back. Even if someone says, I forgive you, she gathers all that stuff, man. It's really, really good. You're going to love it.
Wow. I cannot wait. And, you know, I do have Ship of Magic on my bookshelf. I received that for my birthday, thanks to Brittany from Books with Brittany. And it's not a matter of if I will get to it. It's a matter of I will definitely get to this. It's almost like waiting to open that fine wine. But I think one thing I've really taken from, actually, you've been a great influence on me, Mike, because I know that you made a point of reading series a little closer back to back. We were talking about that last year, and I started taking your cue on that. I was like, you know, I really like that Mike seems to get through his trilogies.
That
And
was
not-
something because when I first started the channel, I started like 6 series, and I was like, I'm just gonna read one book for each per month, and that was a train wreck. And so after I finally got through everything, I was like, I'm done with all this real long stuff. I'm just gonna try to focus on some trilogies and just do like a couple of trilogies like in a month or a month and a half or so, and that worked out a lot better for me, I think.
Yeah, well, it's been working so well for me this year. I've actually completed so many trilogies. But I do appreciate going back to Hob. I do appreciate how her series is set up in a way where it's mostly in trilogy format. So you can take some space between the trilogies. So that's the only reason I put off A Ship of Magic is I want to make sure that I allot the right amount of time where I can dedicate myself to that trilogy. And
That's what makes the series different, I think, is that you can take those breaks if you want to because of the sub-series the way they are. Now, I don't know if I want to after I finish this one, but we'll see. We'll see what
You're on the
happens.
same
Yeah.
path
Can I
was.
respond to Evie just before I forget? Evie,
Sure.
you're absolutely correct. I do care about the ships. I'm saying, like, when I first started Ship of Magic, the draw to me wasn't that there was magical ships. The draw to me was those characters. So, no, I very much love the Vivacia. I very much love Paragon a lot. So, yeah, I'm very much invested. I love Ophelia, too. So, I'm invested in those ships just as much. Again, her ships are a character, and she doesn't write bad ones, apparently.
Yeah, ships with psychological depth is my tagline for live ships. So
She writes shitty ones, but she doesn't write bad ones.
Exactly, yeah.
That you hate, you know. but,
oh,
you know.
she does.
What
And it's because
about-
they're so like relatably terrible, right? Like everyone hates Umbridge more than Voldemort.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like Hob writes like adult Umbridges. Like they're so
Yes.
relatably terrible. That you're just like, oh, there's some people in live ship who like, if I were to compare them like objectively with other characters in fantasy series, I could probably name 200 characters who are way worse like people in terms of what they've done. But if I could only punch one fictional character in the face, it's a live ship one. So
Yep.
Really? Is it
Yeah.
Kyle? I
It's
keep
Kyle.
hearing about
I
Kyle.
hate Kyle.
Yeah.
It's not a spoiler. He sucks from the first page he's introduced.
Well, I'm already spoiled if that's the case because I've heard it so many times
It's
already.
not yeah, he's terrible.
I think in my Ship of Magic review, the best comment I got was someone said, "This book made me be ashamed of being named Kyle."
I'm probably subconsciously now biased against the name Kyle.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Kyles. I'd
Sorry,
like to apologize
Kyle.
to everyone named Kyle.
That's
But
funny.
you should probably change your name. You know.
Wow. And what
Um,
about you, Josh? When did you fall in love with Hob? Was it as early as Farseer, or was Live Ship the one that grabbed your heart?
It was probably halfway through Farseer. It was for me a part of it. Talking about the prose, I don't kind of like Mike. I only notice prose if it's really good or it's really bad.
Hmm.
And I noticed with Hob immediately, it's just she just crafts every sentence and paragraph and chapter, and it's just so polished and just so good. So that was one thing that drew to me, her writing. But I think that was the book where I just really started to connect in a major way with Fitz as a character. And that was the big thing for me, finding out that, oh, there's 2 more trilogies with Fitz and we meet him later in life. I was all in at that point. And then of course, Live Ship, totally different kind of trilogy, which I loved even more than Farseer. And it just went from there. But I did much like a lot of people. I read it over about a year and 3 months. I read each trilogy itself and then took a break and did it that way. And I think it was great. Derry had mentioned in the chat, it works really well that way because between the series, there's time gaps as well. So you're taking a time gap and the world is moving forward and you just check back in, years later. And it works really well if you take a couple months off between series.
I did the same thing as Mike. I read Farseer, and then I had a pretty big gap in between Farseer and starting like the rest of it. But then I read like Live Ship, Tawny Man, Rain Wilds, and Fitz and the Fool like really quickly together.
I'm sensing a trend.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like Assassin's Quest is a very divisive book, apparently, because there's many people that agree with me. A lot of people disagree with me on that one. So I think don't let that be indicative of how you're going to feel about the series, regardless. Because even people who love the series have all said, yeah, Assassin's Quest is probably one of my less favorite ones, but it'll actually be greater for you in hindsight, is what I keep getting told. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, well, I ain't rereading it. Sorry.
Yeah, that was so when I read Assassin's Quest, I was kind of in the middle. I was like, it has some of my favorite scenes in Farseer. It also has my least favorite scenes in sections in Farseer.
Yeah.
And then I reread Assassin's Quest somewhat recently, and I was like, you know what? When I first read this, I think all my criticisms were totally fair. I've just decided I don't care. So, my on reread liking Assassin's Creed, I have to acknowledge that's one of the most biased I've ever been going into a book. But whatever.
You know, it's funny. I kind of feel I really loved Assassin's Quest. At the same time, there were some things, and it wasn't against Hobb. In a way, it's almost in favor of Hobb. But there were some things that really pissed me off in that book in the end. And I think I have some unpopular opinions, but
Mike, you had a really great tweet. You had a really great tweet about Assassin's Quest, about a certain character trying.
Darling. Oh, God. The worst, man.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what's great about her characters is either you love them, you hate to love them, or you love to hate them. It seems like she's very, very good at that. So I don't think there's going to be one character you're going to be like indifferent about. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone you have some kind of opinion about. Like right now, Cirilla is like the bane of my existence. I'll just leave it right there. So.
Wow. So we also got some comments about King, and I feel like we have to bring up King a bit. Actually, Jake, have you read any Stephen King, Jake?
I have read exactly one Stephen King book, and I will just hide for the rest of this conversation.
Oh no,
no, because I can't. I look forward to that journey you make, because you're going to do like I thought Baba was going to do it. After Baba read a couple, I thought it was going to be like the floodgates, but he's got a very, very long list. But no, I look forward to when you just go nuts and you start reading like his top 10 books kind of thing. And
I mean, I started with The Stand, so
it's a good place to start.
And I will The Stand. I have a complicated relationship with Stand, partially because before I read The Stand, everyone was like, "This is his best Stephen King book," which I mean, obviously, a lot of people still say. Then after I read The Stand, and I was like, "Man, I thought some things were really good, but there was a lot that I didn't like as well." So it's like I didn't dislike The Stand, but I wasn't super enthusiastic about The Stand. And then people were like, "Oh no, he doesn't do that with his other stuff. That's just The Stand." And I was like, "Where were all you people before I read it? Like, what's going on?" That being said, I have a plan for Stephen King. He's got like 4 strikes remaining. Because I'm gonna read the first 2 Dark Tower books, because Dark Tower sounds really cool. And that counts as 1 strike because no one trusts the gunslinger. Because everyone was like, "No, you have to read the first 2," and I was like, "Okay, fine." And Salem's Lot, because apparently it's connected to the Dark Tower and really good. And 11/22/63. So he's got 4 strikes. And then we'll see where we go from there.
Well, I would say that I think for sure you'll have a winner in there, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone put a strike on The Stand. So This is you've passed Gary's hot take from earlier on Bernard Cornwell. You now have the worst take of the night. So
well, I've never read The Stand, but my brother has actually both my brothers and my parents are huge Stephen King fans. My brothers and my dad especially are huge Stephen King fans. And my brother said that he read The Stand, and it's about 1,000 pages, I think. And he said, "I could have read 1,000 pages more." That was how much he loved it.
To me, with it and The Stand, people are like, "Oh, I think they're a little touch too long." I'm like, I wish they were longer, man. Are you kidding? I didn't want to leave.
Yeah, that's how my brother felt. But I haven't tried it. And and I have The Talisman on my shelf. Which, have you guys ever read The Talisman? Is that any good?
Yeah. No, I have opinions on it. I like the book for the most part. There's just one character I think is the worst King character in the entire multiverse. Just drives me absolutely bananas. So much so that I blame it on Peter Straub, even though it's probably not true.
I'm worried, but I was gifted that, so I feel like I have to read it. So I have to read it.
I'm interested in Jake's thoughts on Dark Tower, because so many people just ran through it. And Philip telling me that his favorite Dark Tower book is my least favorite one the other day. I was like,
"Oh yeah, I love that. I love that thumbnail too." So what about 11/22/63? Love, adore, one of my favorite books of all time. And at the same time, I'm always nervous about recommending it to people who don't live in the US because I just don't know if it's going to hit the same if you haven't been brought up with that history.
Well, it's the last strike. And also, actually, I should mention there's a drop third strike potential run to first base, which is the Shawshank Redemption, which I'm actually embarrassed that I haven't read because it's my favorite movie.
That's like 92 pages, though. So
that might actually be the next Stephen King thing. I love that movie. That movie's
you'll love the book.
It's my
damn near
favorite
page to
movie.
page.
Yeah.
That's my brother's favorite movie too, actually. Yeah.
My top 4 movies is really easy. After that, it's like Shawshank and the 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
To
After
kind
that,
of play
I
off
don't know.
something that Josh said earlier, he talked about there was like a 200-page section in one of these Fitz books where like nothing really happened and you loved it. A lot of the feedback I hear from people who aren't into slice of life kind of stuff that King is really, really good at has said that the part in 11/22/63, oh, there's like this middle section where they're not doing nothing. And I'm like, yeah, that was only my favorite part of the whole book, because he's so good that not every author can do that. Like I just tried reading Summer Night. Sorry, I don't think Dan Simmons can do it very good. And I think he's an amazing author. Don't get me wrong. Maybe it's just because I'm such a King fan that he's just so damn good at that I just like spending time with those characters. He's able to make that interesting. I think only McCammon I've seen really is able to do it as good as King has so far. And I'm sure eventually Hobb will definitely get there. I got my wall up right now because I think I love the first 2 Farseer books, and then the third one kind of let me down. So I kind of got that. I'm only like not even 100 pages into Ship of Destiny right now. So I got that wall up right now.
Ship Destiny won't let you down. I believe.
But that's what I hear. That's what I hear.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember when I was reading 11/22/63, I got about to the halfway point of that book. And there was part of me that was questioning the direction it was going at that point and wondering, is this meandering? And then I stopped and I thought about it. And I thought about what he was doing and where he was going. And I suddenly saw, I don't know how I saw it, but at the time I remember seeing so clearly how everything fit in that story, how everything worked together, even though it seemed like it might not. I saw how it did. And then the next thing I knew, I was super hooked. And I wouldn't change a single thing about that book. I wouldn't take out a single page. I don't agree that it needs to be cut. I adore that book. I just adore it. Now, Josh, I need to hear your thoughts because I know you love that book.
Yeah, for me, the thing what you mentioned, I mean, it's not a spoiler. It's a portal fantasy. He goes back in time and he has to be there long enough to live a life. So King has to show that. And that is one thing King does so well. But for me, what makes that book the best is the ending of that book, I think, is King's best ending. And I think it's one of the most beautiful endings of anything I've read. It's so good. Just fantastic. I mean, I love King. He's favorite author and all of that forever, but he doesn't always stick at the landing. A lot of times the journey is better than the destination, but not with 11/22/63. I think that one is my favorite. And a big part of it is because that ending was just so damn beautiful.
Yeah, my wife didn't read it, but she watched the miniseries and she was bawling at the end of that. So I was like, yep. So it captured that same feeling for sure. So
I haven't watched the miniseries. I don't know why I'm scared to.
Because that way you can watch it and be mad about the things that they change from, and otherwise, a lot of King fans consider a perfect book of his. So yeah, they'll get that.
I mean, Brian Lee Durfee just put out a video, I think yesterday, saying 11/22/63, a perfect book. So,
agree.
Yep.
And I'm
it
really
was one of those, like, I can't believe that at this point in his career, he wrote a book this long. And because a lot of the books around that time when they got that long were like, oh, King let another one get away from him. And when I saw it, I was like, oh boy, here we go again. But yeah, it blew me away. I couldn't believe at that point in his career he was able to write a book that long, a romance story nonetheless, and it was that good. Yeah.
It was so special. And see, I am somebody who happens to love time travel. I know that's not the most popular subgenre for a lot of people, but I love time travel stories. I grew up on Back to the Future, obsessed with that movie. And especially going back to that period in time and not romanticizing it, I just thought he did a brilliant job with that too. And the thing about King that I love is, and I think you'll see this in The Dark Tower, Jake, when you read it, even with book up, especially if you read up to book 2, is that he has an incredible talent for writing characters from different time periods and making them so believable. Like they really feel like he pulled them straight out of that decade, out of that setting. I don't know how he does.
Well, he was there, so.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Remember, the guy's pushing 80, so yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. but still, I think he does an amazing job. Yeah, I just recently have been praising The Child Thief by Brahm, which is a book I recently reread. And I've often told people that I think that would be a good recommendation for
Yeah, Sarah
certain King
recommended that one to
fans
me. Mhm.
because he does young protagonists in a gritty, realistic way, in my opinion. It does blend the urban fantasy and portal fantasy and Arthurian lore and Peter Pan retelling. I feel like for people who wanted more of a horror take on fairy tale, I think they might enjoy The Child Thief for that reason. And the way that Brahm is also, like King, able to take characters from different timelines, eras in time, even different worlds, and make them seem believable. I think it's an incredible talent when an author is able to do that.
So since time travel got up, I'm going to mention something because I recently read what might be one of my favorite time travel stories I've read, and it's 40 pages. It's by Ted Chiang. It's in Exhalation, the collection. It's called The Merchant and the Alchemist Gate. Time travel fans, I highly, 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 highly recommend it. I'd recommend the entire collection. That's the first story in the collection and my favorite story in the collection. I think it's brilliant.
I need to check out that book so badly. And I'll tell you what, I have the hardest time motivating myself with short story collections. I don't know why. I
Well,
have
just
the
go read
hardest-
Merchant and the Alchemist Gate if you really
Okay.
love time travel. It's the first one. It's amazing. It's got another thing I really like, which is like stories within stories.
Yes, I love that.
I'm a big fan of stories within stories. One reason I'm really liking the Dandelion Dynasty. It's full of stories within stories, where it's like, you get two people and it's like, so how did this happen? And then the next chapter is like that happening, and you can kind of be like, oh, okay, all right.
I
great.
love that. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that too. Yeah.
I want to
that
stick
sounds
on time
fantastic.
travel books. What are some good time travel books? You guys got any favorites? I mean, besides
Well,
H.G. Wells'
1123
Time Machine.
63 is my favorite. I love Kindred by Octavia Butler. And I like Timeline by Michael
I love
Crichton.
Timeline. That's my pick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. I'm trying to think of other ones. Obviously, The Time Machine, H.G. Wells, good story.
But
And trying to think, there's one that I grew up loving as a teenager that nobody knows about, but I've mentioned it in several videos. But it's called Summer of Love, and it's this book that's sort of a time travel narrative. It's a story that takes place in 1967 in the summer of love in San Francisco, and it's about this young hippie flower child. She does LSD. It gets really crazy, and there's this man who comes from the future, the far future, who comes back in time to save her. And I loved it. I read it when I was 14, 15 years old, and I adore the book. But I don't know if it's aged well because that was a long time ago.
I remember when I read Timeline when it came out when I was in high school, and it just melted my brain. I was like, wow, I feel like, of course, that's how time travel works. Of course, that's what Michael Crichton was so great at. But someone mentioned Lycanius, and for people who have problems with story, the time travel was actually really well done in that story.
Yeah.
Really
I think
well
I'll
done.
be reading that
I've
at some
not
point
read
this year.
Lycanius yet, but it's often recommended to me because of my love of time travel.
It's on my list, probably 2023. So the thing is, if I don't read Lycanius in 2022, I'm going to be a liar, because at the beginning of the year, I had a thing like, these are the series I'll definitely 100% start this year. And I've started all of them except 2. And the other one I'm going to start, and the other one is Lycanius. So I'm like, all right, I gotta not be dishonest, you know?
Yeah. And I would say The Dark Tower is a time travel narrative, by the way.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
don't know, like, I can't.
Do you want to talk about something that has
primarily
more of everything than Malazan? It's the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love time travel. I don't know. It's a pretty cool.
I can think of quite a few stories that have some degree of time travel, but I haven't read that many that are like the central concept is time travel, like other than like, a few. And Merchant of the Alchemist Gate probably would be my favorite, which also it's 40 pages, everyone. And I think it's available for free somewhere if you Google it. Because it's the first story, and I think you can get it as a sample for Exhalation, everyone. So if you all want a time travel thing and also like money, there you go. Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to say hi to Brandon really quickly. Hi, Brandon. Love to see you here. Brandon's bookshelf. He does not read fantasy. He's not a fantasy reader, but he's a great friend and has some great literary recommendations if you're into literary fiction.
I do like more than fantasy.
I do too. And you mentioned that in your video today. And honestly, I feel like, and that's that's something we could talk about too, because I know, Josh, you read all across the genres too. And do you?
Check, my camera's
read-
spazzing out. I'm gonna fix it very quickly.
Oh, okay. So I feel like reading outside of fantasy just makes me love fantasy more. Like it enriches my love of fantasy. I love reading other things that are not fantasy, but I love fantasy, and I don't feel like you have to choose one. So
Yeah.
No, I always felt that was one of the reasons I was able to read so much, is dipping in and out of genres. When you read a big fantasy series that is focused on characters and world building and all of that, and then you pick up a novel by a good crime fiction author that's more plot focused, and there's like 4 characters, and it's just kind of a breezy, fast paced thing. It's just like, oh, Mike, you always use the term palate cleanser.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it is. And I feel that the way I read, almost every book feels like a palate cleanser because I jump back and forth. Like, even if I'm reading a trilogy, I don't read them back to back to back. I usually put something in between them. So for me, my reading pretty much stays very fresh because of that I'm just always going back and forth between different genres. It's worked real well for me.
Yeah, every once in a while, it's nice to pick up a book where there's only like 3 characters.
Right?
So great, I don't have to remember this huge cast anymore. Okay, great.
Oh,
No doubt.
absolutely. I'm currently reading Augustus by John Williams, and that is an epistolary novel about the Roman Emperor Augustus. And man, it is so good. Alan's going to have a review for that next week. I actually read it based on, well, it's kind of a long story. I ended up reading Stoner by John Williams earlier this year and just fell in love with the book so much. It is the opposite of fantasy. It is like about a man, a very unextraordinary, unremarkable man. It is so brilliant though. It just completely blew me away. So I had to pick up another book by this author, and Alan loved Stoner. Well, he liked but didn't loved but didn't like Stoner. He did a great review on it. And he basically was all about picking up this Augustus book, because if you know Alan, he's all into that era of history. And yeah, he absolutely loved it, and I'm loving it. And it's just so cool to be able to read things and enjoy other types of stories, and then be able to go back to fantasy. And anyway,
I'm gonna do a little bit. So Augustus is one that's on my radar. It's one of mine. Every time I go in a bookstore, I'll check, go to the fiction, be like, all right, any John Williams. I think I'll start with Augustus because I also really like the Roman history stuff. And I've got a few other like non-fantasies that I'm planning to read for 2023. Like I'm gonna do Count of Monte Cristo because I got to get that done.
That was my top book last year.
oh,
We'll see how it does for 2023. And yeah, Stoner sounded really good. I really liked Alan's review. And Jimmy read it as well.
Yeah. Jimmy's the one who got me to read it because he mentioned it on Chatting with Nuts with Alan, and I'm obsessed with the book. I'm just obsessed. I can't stop talking about it. Yeah.
Mostly fantasy just because like it's so wide. Like there's so many different ones, and I've got so many I still really want to read. I might like start varying it when I'm like I don't know if I want to. Like if I was like I don't really know if I want to read any of these fantasies right now, I would pick up something that isn't. But usually I have the opposite problem. I'm like I would like to have read all of these, and I can only be reading one of them. But we'll
Jake,
probably
you're doing
get to
the
that.
unabridged version of Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah, I'm not a
Okay.
pansy.
All right.
Come on. Also, Brothers
I'm
Karamazov.
curious, like, to the day, I have never seen one book have so many plot twists. Like if I went through it with like Post-it notes and put a spot every time there was a plot twist, I would run out of Post-it notes.
I would like to challenge one, but disclaimer: do the plot twists have to be good? Because I could bring up The Blood in Here by Brent Weeks.
Well, you know how I feel about blood.
There's a lot of plot
You trying to
twists.
make veins pop out of my forehead right now?
No.
There's a lot of plot twists, though. Do
I
they have to be
love Count of
good for
Monte
this to
Cristo,
count?
'cause that'll tell you how good those plot twists are. But do all of them work? Maybe not. But it's like a 1,300 page book. I'm sure you'll find something that you like in there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Count of Monte Cristo I have not read, but I am reading Shogun in January. That's historical fiction. And that is Josh's favorite book of the year so far, right?
I have like the most
Oh, it's-
beautiful edition of it. And I just
You probably have the same one we have, the leather bound
shiny
with
black leather one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just look at it. I'm just like, I don't know. That looks intimidating.
Yeah. I will tell you, Shogun does have a competitor right now with Assassin's Fate as far as my best book of the year. I'm not sure.
Got it.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
about a month to determine that. It's been Shogun since I read it in January, but Assassin's Fate, I'm still, like I said, I'm still feel like I got beat up in a
Wow.
good way.
That was mine 2021.
I
that
just-
was my
I'm really struggling. I feel like, I personally don't rate books, but at the same time, I do want to do a favorites ranking sort of list at the end of the year, and I'm already struggling. I'm like, how do I rank? Because
Gosh, it's time to start getting all that stuff together, ain't it? Ah, right.
it's too stressful.
Everybody thinks end of the year content's like really like easy stuff. Like, are you kidding? I got to make decisions.
Yeah.
I like the top tens. We'll get to be like, I can be like, ooh, top tens.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
do too. I love watching them, and I'm going to do one, even though I'm so indecisive. It's horrible. Shogun, yeah, I'm super excited about Shogun. Crime and Punishment, that is my mom's favorite book, is what I learned recently. And I
Fantastic.
learned that Don Quixote is my dad's favorite book. My parents are so much better read than I am. They both loved Shogun years ago. Yeah.
Crime and Punishment is fantastic. I've read it twice. It's a book I think I'll reread every 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, and I tend to, when I read it, I like to pick a different translator because they are different when they're translated at different times. And I love the one I did last time. It was the Pavir and Volohansky. That's kind of my go-to translators for Russian. But Alex had recommended a translator that he had read that I think I'm going to try next time I do it. But yeah, I adore that book.
Alex from Tall Guy Reads?
Yes, yeah. We were talking, I think, on the Grimoire at one point about CNP, and he had mentioned a translation I'd never heard of. So I think I'll try that one next. So,
You let me know when you pick it up. I mean, I
At
can't
least
keep up with your
one
reading
book.
pace.
I don't know if I'm going to do Crime and Punishment or Brothers, but I'm going to do, I think, one of them in 2023.
Really?
CNP is an easier read. Brothers Karamazov, there's so many characters.
I'm okay with that.
But if you've read Russian, it's so hard because they all have like 5 different names, and just keeping track of everybody. It's just
Oh, so it's like a George R. R. Martin book. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's got 5 damn names. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Speaking of George R. R. Martin.
Do they have more names than Animander Rake? Is my question.
Now, Joanne, is that going to be the first time you're reading this series, Song of Ice and Fire?
No, it's my second
Okay.
time.
Thought so.
I think I might join that as well. I haven't reread a Song of
yeah.
Ice and Fire in
Are
a
y'all
while.
just doing one a month?
Yeah, so I think what we're doing is we're doing the first, it's going to be like 1 to 1.5 months in between each book. So the first one we're going to have on my channel, that's going to be the Game of Thrones live show on February 4th. And then the second one's going to be on Joanna Sousa's channel. And I think we're talking about mid-March for that. And then it'll probably be like 1.5 months for each book after that.
Disclaimer, I have not actually checked all the books that I, in my brain, am like, I have this plan for 2023. There's an excellent chance that I have more books than I can physically read in 2023 planned for 2023. But I do think I will be listening to Brandon's bookshelf, and I think I will be doing Brothers in 2023. But
Jake, that's why I plan my schedule ahead. People all jump
I
all over. How can
figure
you
it
do
out
that?
before
Smart.
January because I'm like, all
Well, I
right,
don't
I have all these
overplan.
books. I'll do a video like, what am I going to read in 2023? And by then I'll have actually figured out like, okay, this is probably roughly what we're going to do. But in my head, I'm just like, all right, these are probably roughly 2023. But I'm starting in my head, I'm being like, a lot of series get mentioned, and I'm like, I have that plan for 2023. I'm starting to think.
Yeah.
2023 is like
Okay, you can go back on my channel and find like what I plan to read in 2021. Some of that shit I still haven't read.
It happens.
That's trying to be like, okay, that's why I
Oh.
made that like permanent ink. These are ones in permanent ink. I'm doing. I will
Yeah.
not be skipping these next year. So
Well, I'm
there's some
definitely
books that are
doing-
just like always 30th on my TBR.
Yeah.
Like Fire and Blood was always 4 months away on my TBR, and it just stayed 4 months away. And I finally read it with Host of the Dragon coming
or
out.
I
And
have
right
one
now,
that I have highly recommended, and then I
Right.
hear feedback on it, and I'm like, maybe not. Like
This is how
Devabat.
I've been doing.
Everybody talking about Devabat. I was like, okay, cool. I want to try that. All the feedback I'm hearing, I don't think I'm the target demo. I'm not saying I'm not going to read it. I'm just saying it's not.
yeah, I read the first book for the book club. I thought it was fine. It's pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, fine. To Jake, that means nah.
No, like they're like, so this is the thing where it's like my average score for books is going to be better than fine. Reading is my favorite hobby. I
Right.
like most books. So it's kind of like there can be a book that like, I don't regret reading, or it's not like I disliked reading, that I'd still like, below average. For if I like dislike reading a book, that's like my favorite hobby was not just neutral. My favorite hobby was unenjoyable. I'm like, ooh. And by the way, I enjoyed Fire and Blood quite a bit. Right now, the one that's always 40th on my TBR is the Silmarillion. Same idea. At some point it'll finally move up, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did read the A Song of Ice and Fire 5 books right around the time the show came out, like right before it. I had some friends who were longtime readers of that series and they talked me into it. I think the way they sold it to me is think about medieval fantasy with dragons and people, different courts fighting over one another, and then zombies. Something like that. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So yeah, I adore A Song of Ice and Fire. I feel like what Martin was able to do with character and plot and world building all at the same time, it was just brilliant. So I'm so excited to revisit that series.
I started a little earlier than you. I reread the first two, and yeah, it was great. It's a really good time. I can't wait for you guys to have full-on conversations about it. I wish I'd have thought about doing that, but I was just like too excited after how good House of Dragon was. I just wanted to visit that world again, because I reread Fire and Blood, and when I did read Fire and Blood the first time, I was admittedly grumpy. It was bitchy because it wasn't Winds of Winter, and I was like, "Stop giving me this crap, George. Give me Winds of Winter." And I didn't really enjoy it as much as I should have. And I was like, it's just a history book too. But when I reread it, I was like, this is great. This is great. I can't wait to see this. So it got me excited. But I read the first two, and I said, all right, Storm of Swords is a big old boy. I'm going to wait until next year when you guys get to Storm of Swords and try to jump on them with you guys.
Oh, fantastic. Yay. Well, Alex from Tall Guy Reads is going to be hosting that live show. So we should definitely have you on. See if we can bring you on for that.
I will never say no to Song of Ice and Fire stuff ever.
Fantastic. And thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, I know that people like Theo and Steve from Steve Talks Books are going to be reading A Song of Ice and Fire for the first time. And I just cannot wait. I cannot wait to hear their
I'm
thoughts.
glad that people have moved past the bitching about how the show ended and they're actually like interested in the books again. Because like the first 3 years I had the channel, I couldn't talk about A Song of Ice and Fire book. Maybe my favorite fantasy series of all time, without it just turning into the comments about season 8 of Game of Thrones. And
what a bummer. Guys. I have to admit though that the show is actually what got me to discover BookTube of all things, which is kind of funny because I feel bad. I'm sorry. I am the worst about watching everybody's videos right now about shows and adaptations because I'm so behind on watching TV lately or watching shows. But I did get into watching the show, obviously, because I was a huge fan of the series, of the book series. And I was not a fan like everyone else about that last season, but I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So I got on YouTube and I found Daniel Green's video analysis of season 8. And that was actually how I found out about this thing called BookTube. So what you all do is a good thing, talking about the TV shows and on your channels. Brings people.
You know what? You know which BookTube video got me back into trying to read a lot of new books, because I was rereading a lot in high school. Probably one of if you're gonna be this one of the most trivial videos was a series tier list by Daniel Green. I was like, I didn't know what series to read. I know it was one of the reasons I didn't read many new books. I was like, I'll just read all the S tier series, all the ones he put in S. And some of them were really good. Some of them were Lightbringer. It worked pretty well.
I'm sorry. I did read the first Lightbringer book and I DNF'd the series.
I would like to make an official apology to Brent Weeks. I have nothing against you as a person.
No.
I really like the first 3 books. Yeah. Anyway.
What's funny, you all found Daniel Green first. I found Mike's channel first.
Hey, all right.
I found your channel, and it was something, I don't know how it happened. I was reading Wheel of Time. I wasn't even someone who watched a lot of YouTube. And I was on YouTube for something, and I saw why you should read Wheel of Time, and I had literally just started the series.
Oh, wow.
And I clicked on the video and started watching those, and then I actually found Daniel Green through you. You mentioned him at one point, because I think you're probably the only booktuber I watched for a while, because I didn't watch much. And so it's just interesting. So I often shout out bigger channels, because I always think, well, I found Daniel Green through Mike. So, you know, maybe somebody hasn't seen Mike that's watching me that needs to, you know.
I'll go make a Daniel Green shout out video just in case, you know, because of all the people
Yeah.
who
I still
watch
get
my
that
channel don't
comment
know who
every
they are.
once in a while on one of my Wheel of Time videos. Someone's like, "Hey, how about you give Daniel Green a shout out for this?" I'm like, I think he's doing okay without my help. You know?
Yeah, he's doing fine.
I think he's doing okay. Even yeah, absolutely. Um, hmm. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, I was going to say this. The one series I was going to start this last year, but I didn't, is the Dandelion Dynasty. And I know that I'm sorry, Jake, because I saw you were doing a read along for it. And I'm like, oh, that's on my list because I have a list of series that I wanted to begin this year. And that was like the only series I didn't start. But
you could have been on the live show, one of the live shows for the
No.
read along, but
I know, I feel so sad, but you're loving it, right?
yeah, it's really good. I'm reading like the more controversial one. I mean, it's really good. Grace of Kings is very different to the other books in that Grace of Kings is more like zoomed out and like basically this is what it feels like. You know how a lot of authors have like the first series and then their follow-up series? And a lot of time people like the follow-up series more. Ken Liu was just like, what if we just took an entire series and we made it one book in terms of how many events happen in that book? And it's really impressive how it was like still a coherent story and I cared about the characters in the first book when it had like an insane amount of stuff happens. Like 6 books worth of stuff happens in Grace of Kings. And then Wall of Storms is kind of like a lot more what you would expect. Still a lot happens, but it's a lot more like zoomed in. And Wall of Storms, I really like Grace of Kings. I love Wall of Storms. Wall of Storms is going to be like that aforementioned top 10 list that's going to happen. Wall of Storms will be in the back half of that video.
Is that the second book?
Yeah,
or?
That's the second one. And I'm on the third one, which is Veiled Throne, which is really good right now. I do so far like Wall of Storms more, but Wall of Storms is insane. That book's wild. So it'll be hard to top.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get to that series. And I'm curious because I'm reading the Baker series right now, the Prince of Nothing trilogy. And a lot of it feels, I mean, I needed to look back on it. If it's omniscient narrator, I can't even remember. I don't think all of it's not omniscient. I mean, I know it's not omniscient narrator for most of it, but some of it, there are some sections where it feels kind of omniscient, where he's like describing the war and describing these different factions. And it feels very historical, almost like you're reading a history book. And the way that people have described the first book, Grace of Kings, it just reminds me a lot.
Yeah, it's omniscient. It's third person omniscient. It's kind of like, you know, like Fire and Blood is like really zoomed out. It's not nearly as zoomed out as Fire and Blood, but take like a normal, what you'd expect from a fantasy book, and then take Fire and Blood and like in between those.
Yeah.
Like it's halfway in between Fire and Blood style and like A Song of Ice and Fire style. Also, if you want a book series where the characters are not safe, I think like Ken Liu might be like the book where the characters are the least safe that I have encountered.
Really?
You know, I've seen like memes that I disagreed with where people have like, you know, George R. Martin, I like to kill the characters, and like Erickson's in the background. I'm like, they both kill characters Ken Liu, I actually think is like, I think he kills his character, like his main characters. Everyone is the least safe. Like, you know, to the point where it's like, you know, George will be like, oh, you know, I want to keep the tensions. Like, you know, if there's going to be a battle in the group of 6, like someone's got to go. Ken Liu's like, oh, there's going to be a battle in this group of 6. One of them gets to survive. It's so, yeah, really insane world. It's really good, like across the board. I think I'm enjoying it quite a lot.
That sounds awesome. And somebody was asking me earlier about The Severing Sun. I have not picked it up yet, but I really want to. I'm hoping to get to that before the end of the year. Do you all feel a rush to get to books before the end of the year? Or nope, just pretty chill about with.
No,
I'm
actually
goal at 85, and I'm probably not going to hit it because these Robin Hobb books are so damn big. But I'm fine with that. Like I said today, I was like, people are obsessed now with hitting some goal, and I'm just like, that's not why I read. It's fun to have that there, but if I don't get that goal on Goodreads, it's not going to ruin my year. So.
I say no, but if you ask me on December 29th, I'm going to be like, I want to finish this.
No, I'm not going to lie. I might read 5 manga volumes real fast.
I mean, I did. So I set my Goodreads reading goal this year to like comfortably make it compared to last year. I was like, this is probably going to be like really close. And last year well, first I started way behind because the first 4 books I read. No, the first 5 books I read was The Bone Hunters, Reaper's Gale, Toll the Hounds, Dust of Dreams, and The Crippled God, which, took a little bit of time. But then I caught up in the end by reading Book of Earthsea, and I was like, this is 6 books. They're all individual. I'm reading it as 1 volume, but it's 6 books. But
no, I do the same thing with my goal. I lowball it so that it's an easily attained goal.
The thing is, now subconsciously, I'm like, but I could hit last year's goal though.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm always going to be more of a quality over quantity type of reader, which is why I created this whole series called Why Read, because I feel like on BookTube it can get a little focused on how many books I read and the numbers, and nothing against anybody who like has fun with that. If that's what makes reading fun for you, that's awesome. I just know for me, I do have those goals now and then, but I always just want to remind myself why I'm doing this. Like, why is this important and meaningful to me? Though I will say that last year, my major goal, I did have a major goal, and that was to finish Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I did. I finished The Crippled God on December 30th. And there was something so beautiful and momentous about finishing that book of a 10-book series. And with that ending, like right at the end of the year, I'm still kind of riding an emotional wave from it. And I think actually, finishing a series like that, I think that was also a huge motivator for me to work on focusing on fewer series and completing series this year. Not to, check things off a list necessarily, but because there's something that's so fulfilling to me about finishing a series. There's a beautiful feeling of seeing how things come together, and I don't know. It was just such a beautiful experience to me.
No, I agree with that, Joanna. The having finished Realm of the Elderlings, in the past week, I have no desire to jump into anything until I jump into Malazan in January. So my December is just going to be odds and ends. I'm going to pick up this book and this book and this book and read a bunch of different genres and not worry about a series. But I feel the same thing with the series too, though, because last year I made a video early in the year, the 10-book series I want to read in 2022. And I did, and it was great. I read a lot of series this year, but next year I'm shooting that video like soon. It's not going to be series. It's going to be, I have like 3 or 4 series I'm going to include. And then there's 3 or 4 just authors that I want to read for the first time. And then there are just some individual books I want to read next year. So yeah, I think for me, I go through like a little ebb and flow with that, with knocking out all those series and then just kind of stepping back and saying, I just want to try some new things.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And you're going to definitely want all that space as you're reading Malazan too. So that's kind of perfect. Yeah.
I'm kind of like,
when it comes to The Hangover. When I finished Wheel of Time, my wife was like, saw how emotional I was. And she's like, maybe you should take a break. And I just said, that's hilarious. And I started Faithful in the Fall the next day.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't do breaks.
I'm kind of like, when I get in a month and I read less, I feel kind of disappointed, but it's not because like, I want the big number. It's because I know if I didn't read a bunch, like if I had a good reason, then I'm fine with it. But I know it probably means I just did more scrolling on my phone and less reading. And I just like, both are like, things I do in off time, but reading is just so much more of a fulfilling thing to do. And I just feel like I kind of failed at time management slightly. If I didn't have anything that caused me to read less books that month, I just like got distracted more and managed my time more.
Well,
so
see,
I still like it.
I'll be like, hey, just make sure you're keeping it fun. But I'm also working data analysis and I've set goals and I'm like, you got to hit these goals, So I'm goal oriented, but I'm like, hey, have fun.
Yeah,
like if I don't succeed because like something crazy happens and I'm really busy, then I'm not going to be like, oh no, the number's smaller. But if everything was going normally and I read less books, then I'm just kind of like, I mean, I could have read more books. I like reading books. I need to do better. I would have enjoyed the month more if I'd spent that time reading books.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm so excited to go back to A Song of Ice and Fire because I remember when I first read it. I mean, I've only read it once. I know everybody here, you probably read it like a million times now, Mike, but I've only read it once. But I do remember that when I was reading it, just the experience of like, I can't wait to get home from work so I could pick up this book because I just love that feeling so much, and it just brings me back to that. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I know a series is really good when I feel like when I'm on my lunch break and I'm like, oh, I can get a few pages in. Yeah, that's when I know a series is like really getting me.
Absolutely, I feel that way too.
It was Project Hail Mary, but that's because I read Project Hail Mary in 24 hours because I couldn't stop. I started at I was just like, oh, I read before I go to sleep. If I don't read, I'll not go to sleep.
I have good memories of that book for two reasons. One, it was an excellent book, and two, I was in Jamaica in actual paradise reading it.
Oh, that helps. I started at like 1 a.m. and I was like, I'll just read like 20 pages and then go to sleep. And then I'm on page like 150 and I'm like, oh, I have work tomorrow. And then all of that work, I was like, I want to know what happens. And then I got home and read the rest.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is there any book that I guess related to that, is there any book that you've read this last year that you just didn't want to end, that you were reading? You're like, no, I don't want it to end because it's so good.
Is this for everybody or just for Jake?
For everyone.
Swan
Song.
So wow. I like endings. Final books and series are often among my favorite. Mm-hmm. And as much as often I'd like books to keep going, I also just really love getting to the end of like a book I really like. So I think I don't have that as much as some people do, because even though it's like, yeah, I'm sure I know I'll find another really good book. So I don't have that as much. Like I was really happy to get done to Realm of the Elderlings and most like big series. I think finishing it, as much as like, I'm starting to like standalones and shorter series more, nothing quite hits the same as finishing a really long series. Like, yeah, it just hits different.
You know how much heat I got for saying that I was glad to finish Wheel of Time because it felt like I got like a monkey off my back. People took that as an insult. I was just saying, like, it feels good to finish a big long series like that. It feels like an achievement. What's wrong with that?
No, it does. Yeah, I bet.
And they're like, oh, I can't wait to be done with it. That's not what I said. It's just,
they misinterpreted what you're saying. But tell me about Swan Song. So you really love that book. Did you love it more than
I think for people like Jake who didn't like The Stand, I think maybe Swan Song might be more what you're looking for, because those two books are always going to be compared. It's like Armageddon versus Deep Impact. That's really what those two books are like, really. So I mean, every once in a while you get that thing where you have two books or two movies that have a very similar premise, but they're very, very different. I think that they are not the same. It's just I think that people who love The Stand are going to like Swan Song. People who like Swan Song are probably going to like The Stand. So that's the highest compliment coming from me, from my second favorite book from my favorite author ever. So yeah, Swan Song is just great. It's just damn brilliant. You'll be very, very, very emotional at the end of that book. Like I was so messed up after that book. I read Call of the Wild right afterwards. And I'm like, is Call of the Wild actually this sad, or am I just like still in emo mode because of
no, wait, I'm thinking of Where the Red Fern Grows. I don't know why.
Oh, we don't talk about that book. That's no. I made a video a while back about books that made me cry.
Oh yeah.
And I almost cried in that video just talking about this book I read 30 years ago, Where the Red Fern Grows.
Yeah.
Just thinking about that book gets me tore up. So.
Totally. It's one of those books. I read it too. I read it when I was like 10, 11, and I still get emotional.
In sixth grade. I was like, were you guys trying to ruin a generation? I mean, shit, we already had the Never-Ending Story.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. The Never-Ending Story with the horse.
With Artax, yeah.
Artax, yeah.
I definitely know what everyone's talking about right now.
I have this story. You
got this 16-year-old on the damn thing here. So,
16. Oh, it's okay.
Have you all read the Never-Ending Story? Or have you?
I haven't, but I was just called 16, which actually I don't care. I remember when I was a wee lad, I've always looked young for my age, and I've at some point realized, like, on balance, this is going to be a win, because now it's like, maybe I looked 13 when I was 16, but when I look 30 when I'm 45,
yeah,
then we'll see who won this deal.
It's playing the long game.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the Never-Ending Story. Have you read it or watched it? Well, I'm sure you both have watched the movie, right, Josh and Mike?
Yeah, I never read the book. I've seen the movie countless times when I was a kid.
Yeah,
but I haven't read it. No.
I read the book when I was a teen, and I grew up with the movie, loving the movie, and I was shocked because I didn't know, number one, that the movie was based on a book, and two, that the movie ends halfway through that book. And the sequels, well, at least the first sequel has nothing to do with the book at all. But I love that book, and I love the movie. I love both.
Me too.
Not necessarily. That reminds me of, you guys heard the Stephen King story where someone told Stephen King like they don't like his books, they like nice stories like The Shawshank Redemption, and he was like, "Yeah, I wrote that," and they were like, "No, you didn't
write anything uplifting like Shawshank Redemption." Well, actually, I did write that one. She just goes, "No, you didn't."
And Stephen King was just like, "Okay." Also,
yeah,
like,
Gary, the Nothing, but man,
Sorry,
Gamork, the wolf, like scared the piss out of me as a kid. So it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, and I showed it to my kids, and they have to like hide behind the couch when that scene comes on. So yeah, the 80s was the Wild West. They let us get scary stories, read the dark, showed us Never-Ending Story. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing that we're not more messed up.
Oh
Different
man,
times.
the scary stories in the dark. That the one with the girl with the spider egg in her face that splits open. I don't know if you remember
I
that.
don't know what you're talking about. Now, please no. No, we don't need to go there.
There's like disgusting artwork too of this like spider egg
It's
hatching.
brutal.
I've already heard enough. I think we're fine. I think we can definitely move on.
Sorry, the Damaged Generation X.
They let us buy that school in elementary school. They let us buy that book. Amazing.
Yeah.
Now it's like they're trying to ban like Harry Potter books in schools and shit. It's
I went
amazing.
to a Catholic school for elementary, and I found horror that way. And this is pretty crazy what I could find there. Mhm.
I mean, I read A Song of Ice and Fire at a suspiciously young age because I think my parents didn't know what was going on, and they were like, "He likes fantasy books. Let's get him a fantasy book for Christmas." And then they started watching the show, and they were like, "This is what it's about."
Oh, wow.
But
a lot of
hey, Mom,
people-
if you're watching this in the future, I turned out fine, so it was
Oh,
okay.
how old were you?
I wasn't super young. I was like 14.
Oh,
Which
wow.
For A Song of Ice and Fire is probably like,
See,
But
I
anyways, it was
did when
fine. I
was
turned out
14,
okay.
yeah.
It was fine. But yeah.
That's a good age. I read it at 14. So
Yeah,
I
it's
know
about
what
the same.
Mhm.
Yeah, see, and we
Yeah,
all turned out fine.
The ending is more like problematic, I guess, as an adult. I think when you read it as a kid, it's just, oh, well, that's how it ended. No big deal. And then you read it as an adult, and you're like, okay, yeah. Still love it. It's still my number 2 favorite King book.
I still haven't read it. I
what's
still
number
haven't read
one?
it. I haven't read so much King. It's sad. I've only
What's
read
your
the
number
Dark
one,
Tower
Jeff?
series, Salem's Lot, 11/22/63.
Yeah,
Mhm.
11. Mike, mine 11/22/63 is my favorite.
It's an acceptable answer. This is
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah,
one
you
of the weird
did
people who said something like the Dark Half or shit or something like that.
Yeah.
Really?
Josh did a
That's
top, I think top 5 favorite Stephen King books.
It was
video.
10. Yeah, it was
Okay.
10. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun to do. It was hard to nail down though, but it'll be interesting because I'll start a reread at some point just to see how much I contradict myself, when I reread things.
Why I'm doing my ranking Stephen King, like that tier list thing, and I'm doing it very, very slowly because a lot of these I was like, I haven't read them. Like I just reread Desperation for the first time since release day 25 years ago. I have
Yeah.
to remember these things before I can rank them. But that's
Yeah.
going to spoil eventually my top 10 Stephen King books, obviously, if you watch those videos. But I'll still make it just because people ask for it so much.
Yeah.
I'm very ill-read when it comes to King, but I love talking about books with my family because they're all but much better read than I am. And my siblings, my 3 siblings and my parents, they've all read so much King. And so one time I just asked them about what King they've read, and all of them have read different King from one another. So they were saying, "Oh, I love this. I love The Green Mile, and I love this one, and The Stand, and there was this." I don't know. It's just crazy. So it was just amazing. It's amazing for me to learn from them.
Hey, Durfee's here. And Durfee, my parents took me to go see RoboCop, and they were like, "Oh no," in the first like 20 minutes. Oh yeah. But my dad was like, "No, we paid. We're staying."
I never saw. That's the one with. I'm gonna guess that's the one with Schwarzenegger.
Oh, it's so good.
It's amazing. It's aged incredibly well. Watch it.
And
Oh,
Joanna
Jones is
as
the
a-
villain. Yeah,
and
Well,
Joanna as a musician, it has one of the best film scores ever written.
absolutely.
Oh, no way! Cool.
Yeah,
It's
so
amazing
good. Yeah.
score.
I'll have to
Yeah.
check that out. I actually did read a little bit of Conan this last year, just a couple of stories. The Elephant in the Tower. I think that's the one.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Oh,
I read.
Great one to start with for sure.
Yeah, I read that collection, that leatherbound one last year, and I was blown away. I really loved his writing. I mean, he's just
Yes.
Oh, Robert Mars.
highly underrated in my mind.
Yes. He's a
I tried
brilliant.
talking about him on BookTube because it's like, dude, no one talks about Michael K. Vaughn. Or
Yes.
Michael K. Vaughn is the only other one I know that talks about Conan books. I'm like, and Durfee, of course.
Yeah.
'Cause
And
Durfee talks about everything.
Rockio
that?
as well. Rockio's a big
Rocky,
Conan
yeah,
fan
yeah.
as
So,
well.
but
I saw him
Rocky,
on.
do you really call him a booktuber though?
I just saw it on because Scott had the video with like Rockio's
Yeah,
favorite fantasy
yeah.
series, which that counts.
I was like, come on, this is the father of sword and sorcery. Why don't more people talk about him? I was like, he was doing a lot of this shared universe stuff before even Tolkien was doing it. So Howard, I think he gets more respect, later in life, but I still don't think BookTube definitely doesn't talk about him enough.
Michael K. Vaughn's doing really well, though. I mean, he's
Yeah.
over
No, he's
10,000
great. He's the
subscribers
best.
now, and he mostly dedicates his channel to Conan and Edgar
He did
Rice
one the other day
Burroughs.
he did a deep dive on Edgar Rice Burroughs. Everyone should watch that and then pick up Edgar Rice Burroughs because he's amazing. John Carter of Mars is just
I've got too
brilliant.
many books, Mike. There's so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah,
They're
but
on the
see,
list.
this is stuff. But Jake, with the stuff that you read, you could fly.
Oh,
You could
yeah.
probably read the entire Conan Chronicles in like a weekend. Every one of them's like 12 pages long.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of books I
Otherwise-
want to read. It's on the list.
And I know that Brian Lee Durfee's been covering this on his channel too, but the Elric saga, I've been reading this. This is volume 1. Loving it. I did read some of these when I was a teenager. It was actually some of the first fantasy I'd ever read. But man, it's fun. It is
I
just
got those first
fun.
2 volumes. So yeah, I definitely.
Yeah, there's this one, The Fortress of the Pearl, and I had not read that one when I was a teen, and I just read it recently, and I was kind of mind blown by it. I was kind of mind blown for being such a short, like, novella story. What a beautiful story arc Michael Moorcock created, and just some of the themes he brought out, and the multiverse layers, and I don't know, there were just some cool things happening in that story that there's something about reading the source, reading authors like Robert E. Howard, or reading from Moorcock, or reading Tolkien for that matter. Just reading some of the people who influenced the genre. I don't know. There's just something special about seeing where the roots came from.
And
One
that's
of the
why
other ones I'm excited to get
young
to is-
whippersnapper booktubers say, "Oh well, this was good, but it's aged out." No, it hasn't.
No.
No, I reread Lord of the Rings and it was.
I go full
It's
Malazan.
incredible.
You just didn't get it.
Yeah.
The thing is, you
one
read
I'm
that
excited for
stuff
is
and you
Gorman.
appreciate Malazan better. So, like, for example, you read Conan and then you get Karsa and you understand the brilliance there. And
Have any
yeah,
of you had Gormenghast? That's one is moving up the list. I've been aware of it since Dylan or Baba or whatever you want to call him. He really loves that. That's moving up the list. But
I
that's
really
the
want to
same era.
I want to read that one. I am intimidated by it though, because I did read the first paragraph. I just scrolled on Kindle on Amazon, and I read the first paragraph of Titus Groans, and wow, that writing is dense.
I'm over being intimidated by books,
I
is what I
know.
thought. And then I saw then I saw a page from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, and I was like, okay, just none of these books are that scary. We're
Oh
fine.
yeah,
And then I was like, is that just like
James
one page? And they're like, no,
I
the entire
do
book is
read
like
that
that.
book
That's
for
just
sure. Like
that's
I said,
like
I
the
just
entire
looked at
book is like
Shogun,
that.
I'm like,
I'm like,
not right
okay.
now.
All
Yeah.
right. I'm not, but you know what? After Malazan and Book of the New Sun, I'm not intimidated by Gormenghast. And I wasn't intimidated by Malazan. I was like, you know what?
I wasn't either, really.
So you know what? I'm sure I'll read Gormenghast. I'll get used to it, and it'll be fine. That's my.
I'm intimidated by James Joyce.
There
I
too.
read The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, and that's one of his tiny little ones, and that was one of the hardest reads I've ever had. I can't imagine tackling Ulysses or one of those bigger ones he's written.
Yeah. The only person there's like one person on Discord who I know who's read it, but that person is a person. I think that person's an AI because they seem to know everything. So I'm not convinced anyone else is reading it. Also, I just like to, address but you could read this so fast. Yeah, but there's like 40 things that I could read in a weekend, and I can't read all of them in a weekend. So I basically just decided that all of those cancel out, and I'll just ignore it and read whatever I want to.
Yeah. Well, if you do read any of these, Mike, just, highlight them on the channel as you will, because I think it really does I think it's a great service to bring.
You mean I get to make
highlight-
more cock jokes? Hell yeah. Gotta do some more cock and some Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, just do a month of that, just an entire month
Month
of
of things
Moorcock
like
and
that.
Philip
Hey,
K. Dick, and then have a
Durfee.
wrap up.
While
It does
Durfee's
help.
here, I just want to say, Durfee, I read the first chapter of your new book. Baby, what is you doing? Oh my God. So there's a tease for you guys.
I know that's actually a series I want to start next year, and I'm sorry, Durfee, I haven't read it yet. But
I
I've
didn't
heard
start
nothing but
till this
amazing
year,
things.
so, yeah.
I've heard brilliant things about that whole series. So
Yeah,
After you do Song of Ice
Petric's
and
been
Fire, I
raving
think
for a while.
Yeah, you'll slide right into this. Sorry, Josh. I didn't mean
Yeah,
to-
no, I was saying Petric was raving about it on a couple videos recently, so I know he's been really excited.
Yeah, that jerk's got me to read a few things.
For me, it was Scott that got me to read that. So
Oh, yeah.
Scott's got me a few times. If Scott likes a book, I'm usually like, okay, well, he's one of the people who definitely
I've aligned
Makes
a
me- yeah.
lot with Scott's taste on books, a lot. So
everyone gets a mulligan. And
Yeah,
that's true for
okay. I
authors.
love
Like
that
when I read
everyone's reading Sun Eater now, but when I talked about it 2 years ago, people were like, I'm not really into that.
So, Mike, that's because when you talked about it, that was the first time I'd heard of it. So
Yeah.
that was like, okay,
Yeah.
ping, it's on my radar.
It's
and then
weird
when a
because I
bunch of
look
other
at the
people
analytics for that video and it's like, like out of nowhere, it just finally took off. So
Yeah,
his
that's like
books are dope.
this is the Alan thing. Alan thinks he doesn't get anyone to read things, but that's just because he's like the first pebble.
Right.
And then he sees the effect of the avalanche like later, and he's like, "Oh, these other people did." And it's like, "No,
Well, look at
Alan,
Faith
you
from the
started the
Fallen.
avalanche.
You couldn't
You
find
were the
anything
pebble."
about John Gwynn on BookTube, and now it's like everywhere. So yeah, it happens sometimes. You feel like you're the pioneer of it.
So,
but
Mike,
it's
you
out
were
there
just
actually
you
doing
were
good
one
books.
of the Sun Eater pebbles, and now you're just
Yeah.
seeing the avalanche. This
I
was you. It
started-
took a while.
I started trying to listen to the audiobook of Empire Silence, and I was lost within a couple of chapters. And I'm like, I can't do this.
That's why I
audio.
read with my eyeballs.
I know,
because
I
there's
have to
way
with
too many
that.
moving parts in some of these books. I don't know how you guys do it.
The answer is I don't.
I can't. Well, I do listen to audiobooks, but when I listen to audiobooks, it's usually not fantasy or sci-fi.
Also, that's like my planet. I'm trying to be like the Guy Gavriel K pebble. Once Philip gets to it,
Oh,
he'll get everyone else to read it,
I am
and
gonna
I'll be
read
like,
Guy
"That
Gavriel.
was me."
Hey,
I'll
he's
take credit for it.
one of my. I mentioned my top priorities next year. He's a priority for me.
Yeah, see,
after
I was the
when-
pebble.
That's
It's
just
delayed.
no one can mention GGK right now without bringing you up.
It's
So,
true.
You're
And I've
definitely
been telling people every time I hear people bring up, I want to read GJK and I want to read Tigana, I keep saying, I'm going to start with the Lions of
That makes you
Al-Rassan.
cool. Good job.
Because
Because everyone
he
starts
There's
did
with
a
that.
coin
Ghana.
flip between those two for me. I only went to Ghana because I was like, hey, fantasy. There's so few fantasy standalones.
Do you think
They're
that's
all
a good
technically
assessment?
fantasy. They're just less
Jake?
fantasy.
Do you
But
think
anyway.
that's a good assessment, Jake? That,
What do you say?
would you say that's a good assessment, Jake? That Tigana is more fantasy based?
Tigana is definitely more fantasy. Tigana is one of his more overtly fantasy. The only thing he has that's like more clearly fantasy is the Fiona of Our Tapestries, but those just aren't as good. Sorry, Guy Gavriel K, if you're watching this, you're one of my favorite authors. Those just aren't as good. You probably know that. They were the first books he wrote. Tigana is like a pretty big step up in quality. It's one of like my fifth favorite Guy Gavriel K book, which is a lot better, which is, you know, probably a lot higher bar than it sounds. And it's like, you know, the antagonists for that are like two sorcerers who have like conquered a peninsula, and it's like it had 9 provinces and they've each conquered 4. And so, you know, in the other books, like it's not going to be like, hey, there's this guy, and one of the problems is like they have really powerful magic. The magic is a lot more restrained in the other ones. Kind of like if you think of like some things in A Song of Ice and Fire, like some stuff is overtly magical. There's White Walkers, but in a lot of stuff, like there's just little sprinkles of magic, and it's kind of like that. And then one thing he kind of said is, and I think this kind of works really well, is one thing he does is he takes some of the beliefs of the time and he just like makes them true. And his explanation for this, I think is brilliant on why he does this. And it's that a lot of time when people are reading like historical characters, there's kind of a modern arrogance that's hard to escape of like, we know so much more about the world. Ha ha ha. You guys don't understand gravity or how science works. Get wrecked. But in this case, when some of the beliefs that sound like that are magical are actually just true, you're put in the same position of the characters when you don't know what's true and what's not. Because when they say like, we do this to make like the crops grow, it's like, okay, they might be wrong, but they also might be right, which is in the same position that the characters are. And I think it's a great example of someone using magic to actually bring you closer to the characters instead of making them more distant. Anyway, that's my Guy Gavriel K monologue for the video.
I love that. I love that.
Derry, you got to trust GGK here, okay? Fiona Var, I like Fiona Var, but like, you'll be fine, I promise. Also, GGK definitely was once cursed. He got a Faustian bargain where he's like, I want everyone to like read this book. Then everyone's like, okay, we'll read Tigana, and then we'll really like it. And then, but the catch that he didn't catch for his Faustian bargain is that people just read Tigana and be like, this is brilliant, and then not read any of his other books for 20 years. Never seen it happen more than author. Philip did this. And he was like, yeah, I read Tigana like 20 years ago. I loved it. It was so good. Haven't read anything else. And I'm like, why would you do this to me, Philip? This was definitely a personal attack at me. Okay.
I wonder if he isn't as popular just because he doesn't have a big long series and he doesn't write trilogies. He has all the standalones. I wonder if that's
I think it's partially that genre wise he's kind of in between historical fiction and fantasy, so he's harder to market. And also a lot of the time, like when people read the first book that they really like by an author, they're like, no, we want you to do this again. You did that thing I liked. Do that thing again. And he's like, no, I'm going to do the other thing. And a lot of people are like, no, I wanted you to do that thing. This happened actually early in like Brandon's career when he wrote Elantris. And then when he wrote The Final Empire, it sold worse than Elantris did originally because the people who liked Elantris were like, you did the thing. We want you to do the thing again, even though like, I think The Final Empire is a lot better. And GGK just like kept doing that, but whatever. He's doing fine. And that's kind of what he was like. He's like, I'm doing fine. I don't care. It's okay.
I don't know if you know the channel, the Library Ladder.
Love that channel.
Yeah, Bridger has a couple of good GGK videos, and the one
they're way better than mine. Yeah.
Well, the one that I think he's the most underrated booktuber out there in my opinion. But the one that really grabbed me is his best fantasy author is Not Who You Think, and his answer is GGK. Yeah. That's when I took notice. Okay, this is somebody that I think I need to read because he was showing Erickson and Hobb and all the people that you would expect, and then he said it's GGK. So yeah, he's a priority for me next year. I think I'm going to do Lions of Al-Rasan and Song of Arbonne. I think are the two.
Yeah, I love those two as well.
That's the Madrigal one or the song.
Song for Arbonne is was after Tigana and before Lions of Al-Rasan. It's probably like Lions is one of the least fantastical. After Lions, it's like none of them are like really fantastical, but Arbonne is kind of like middle of the pack on the scale of how fantastical they are.
I feel like Jake with GGK is me with Stephen King. Whenever somebody names what book they're going to read, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good one. No matter what it is.
Like, can we got a spam in the chat?
I'm going to block it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the most consistent authors for me. I love almost all of his books. There's only like one I gave less than 4 stars, which was Isabel, which don't worry about Isabel.
Yeah, Bridger
also
thing.
That's one of the nice things about all standalones is it's like if he's not one of your favorite authors and you're like, oh, I like his books, but like he's not one of my favorite authors anyways, the ones that are not like the most popular, you can just not read them. It's not like Crossroads of Twilight. It's just like, they're all standalones. You can just not read it. It's fine. So yeah, if you end up being like, oh yeah, I like Guy Gavriel K, he's not like my 3rd favorite author or 2nd favorite author like he is for me, you can just not read Isabel and it's totally fine. And none of the other books will be hurt.
I mean, I picked up in like a used bookstore. I found some of his books and just kind of read the first couple of lines in a couple of them. And I thought, wow, this man can write.
Write, yeah.
Gorgeous prose right away. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that. I am going to start with Lions of Al-Rasan. And I do own Tigana, so I will get to that as well. Yeah.
This plan is approved by me.
Yeah, and it's nice. I know that Mike did that. You did that wonderful video on palette cleansers and standalones to have ready for 2023. I'm going to need that because I don't want to add too many series to my plate. Going through A Song of Ice and Fire again, and I'm doing The Wars of Light and Shadow, and several things going on right now. So I'm definitely going to be looking forward to some standalones and palette cleansers next year too.
I think it's the easiest way to step outside of that fantasy comfort zone too. Is trying some standalones. You get you some thrillers, some drama stuff. Like a lot of the ones I named is like not anything I'd usually read. It's recommendations that people have made that I think, it sounds like that could be, a nice break from everything for sure.
Yeah, I saw that. And man, I really want to get into more sci-fi. That's the other thing that I keep putting off. And that's hard because there are a lot of sci-fi series I want to read, and including Sun Eater, of course. Three Body Problem, I keep hearing great things about. I want to read the 4th Dune book, God Emperor. I still haven't gotten to that. Yeah.
Make sure you're just emotionally in the right place before you read God Emperor, because
Really?
whoa.
Well, just the cover alone is really cool. So the wormy guy, I love it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm starting back on The Expanse next month, when I'm like, hey, I need to read more standalones. Here, let me get back into this 9-book series I started and never really got that far into.
Yeah,
I
this year
read
in
Leviathan Wakes, and I really liked Leviathan Wakes. Like, I really liked it. But I, for some reason, just felt like I'm good with this. I don't feel like I need to go on in the series. I don't know.
Did you watch the television? Did you watch the TV show?
I did. And actually, that's one of the rare cases where I saw the show, just the first few episodes. I didn't watch the whole season. I watched the first few episodes about a year or two before I read the book. And I thought that actually was very complimentary. But I enjoyed that first book. And maybe it's because of the way things ended in that book. I can't give away without spoilers.
Well, you haven't even met the best character in the series yet.
Oh, really? Oh.
Ava Sarala's debuts in book number 2, and she's the best.
Maybe I'll consider it.
An Expanse soonish, I think. That's the next big series I'm starting. But this year I did all standalones in May, and I think I might do it again next year as well. Just make May randomly, completely arbitrarily the month of all standalones. It went really well this year, so why not do it again?
Yeah, you read some good standalones.
Also, standalones, it's easy for them to keep moving down your TBR, I think, because compared to series, it's well, I don't want to forget everything that happens. And so I think having 1 month where I just do standalones stops them from just perpetually moving down my TBR.
Jake, let me give you a gift. Standalone September. Boom.
And that's already May. Sorry, it's too late. It's inevitable.
Standalone. Jake, we still need to read the Silmarillion.
Does that count as a standalone? We could do Silmarillion.
Oh, yeah.
We do need to do that. Okay. Yeah.
That does keep moving down my TBR.
I got the nice new version. Haven't even opened it yet.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I think I have that version of Lord of the Rings, and I might get that. I'll probably read the Silmarillion first, and then if I really like it,
I have it's not a first edition, but I have the first printing of Silmarillion. It's 18th printing or something, but I'm just saying I felt like it was finally time to upgrade it. And if I
really like that edition of Lord of the Rings. It's a really good balance between quality and also not being afraid to touch it, because it's not $400 and also not bankrupting me.
I find myself reading more out of the Kindle because I'm so terrified of I don't know, I live with kids and kids are disgusting guys. My hands will be dirty and I'll pick this up and be like, oh my God, freak out. So I've been using the Kindle more and more.
Yeah.
I really like the UK Realm of the Elderlings paperbacks for readability. They're not quite as huge, but I found the spines don't break. So I like those. I'll also the words. I'm a big fan of the words.
It has black speech.
Yeah, the words inside are
great. The edges are even, but it does have black speech written on it. So.
Yeah, and also Jerry, for that version of Lord of the Rings, it has the words on the ring. Actually, we're just gonna grab it.
Yeah. What were you to say, Josh? Sorry.
No, I was going to say with the Silmarillion, I've been reading a lot of the Tolkien Legendarium recently, and the Unfinished Tales is my favorite. So if you do like a lot of that backstory, the Unfinished Tales has been my favorite. I did all of the Great Tales last year, and the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales. And I'm going to
see. I was all excited when Rings of Power came out. I was like, I'm going to read Beren and Luthien and Fall of Gondolin, and then Rings of Power was like, And then I was like, I'm not that excited anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. I know some people really like Children of Hurin. I'm excited to get to Children of Hurin.
That one's great. And it doesn't, it feels like Tolkien, but it feels a bit different, which is great. Beren and Luthien's fantastic, but the Unfinished Tales are my favorite so far. But I got the omnibus of the History of Middle-earth. I'm going to read those next year.
Cool.
This also comes with a map, by the way. If people are curious about getting this edition,
very famous map,
they have the 2 fold-out maps that come with them.
And now I don't have to, get my nice 50th anniversary edition with the gold edges and all that, out of the slip sleeve. I can just read this version of Lord of the Rings. So
My husband and I started rewatching the movies last year. We still haven't watched The Return of the King. I don't know what's wrong with us. But I
shoot,
think
we
it's
watched the extended
yeah.
edition twice a year in this house. Yeah, once over the summer and then once over the holidays. So
I
yeah,
know.
it's like a
I'm
tradition.
terrible. My thing about adaptations is that the second I watch an adaptation, when I watch it, I'm very conscious. Oh, they left this part out of the book from the book out of the adaptation. They did this differently. And I'm fine with that. I don't have any problem with adaptations doing things differently. Trust me. But the challenge I have is that it distorts my memory of the book. So if I take enough time away after watching an adaptation, I won't remember what happened in the book.
I'm sure this has happened to me for A Dance with Dragons. I'm
Really?
sure when
Yeah.
I reread A Dance with Dragons, things are going to
It happened
happen,
with me
and I'm
when
going
I
to be
just-
like,
when I just Clash of Kings reread, I was like, look, I read those first 3 books probably a dozen times. Derry with Realm of the Eldlings is me with the Song of Ice and Fire with how many times I reread it. And honestly, because the last time I reread the series was right before the show started, because I did the reread before Dance with Dragons came out. And after it'd been 11, 12 years and so some things I started being like, I can't remember if this was from the show or if this was from the book, so that will happen.
Yeah.
but why did they change the argument between Aragorn and Gandalf about whether they should go to Moria? They reversed it. I still don't get why they changed that. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Wow.
That's one where it's like I don't care, but I'd be like,
Wait,
Yeah, it
I
sounds
wanna
like
see
it.
if I can
So
Sounds like
remember.
you don't
curious.
care.
no, I want to know
Let me see if
why
I
they
remember
did
this
it.
right. Tell me if I'm right.
Okay,
So
Lord of the Rings.
Gandalf
spoilers, if
wanted to
anything.
go through Moria. Is that right?
Yeah, in the book, Gandalf is like, "Yo, Moria." I shouldn't say "yo," and I'm saying what Gandalf said. I should be struck down. So for I care about knowing why they did it. I don't
Sure.
care that they did, but I would love to be like, so when you guys were talking about this, what advantage did this change have? Because in the movie, like Gandalf is like, no, Moria is like super dangerous, everyone, and then Gimli's like, no, we should go through Moria. It'll be chill. And then Frodo is freezing and is like, yeah, we'll go through the mines. But in the book, it's the other way around. Gandalf's like, we should go through Moria. And Aragorn's like, no, that's a bad idea. And then they try and go up the mountain and then they
It
get
does
wrecked
seem
by
like the
nature.
more prudent.
And then they're defeated by nature, except it's actually, anyway, they're defeated by the mountain. And then they're like, okay, we'll listen to Gandalf. And I'm so curious why they changed it.
Well, there are commentaries on the Blu-ray disc. I'm not saying that's what they have on there, but he might actually have an answer there, because a lot of the times Peter Jackson will say what they were thinking with some of the changes that they do make, stuff like that. That one probably just me is like, hey, we want to set up like Gandalf knows that's probably going to be his end there or something like that. I don't know.
That makes sense.
They might have had some reason for it, but
because it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I have the
this is me with every Stephen King adaptation. Why would you
Yeah.
change that? It makes
I'm
no sense
kinda-
to change that.
So I think there's the two philosophies for adaptations is like some adaptations is like we can change this, so we're gonna do it. While some it's we have to change this, so we're gonna do it. And I'm more on the we have to change it. I know that adaptations can be different, but I'm just saying The Martian and The Princess Bride are pretty damn faithful adaptations. And I can't name a single really faithful adaptation that was bad. I can name a lot of not faithful adaptations
Preaching
that
to
are
the
bad.
choir all the time. I'm like,
Mhm.
why do they?
So-
Stephen King sold billions of freaking books, right? And all of these screenwriters think that they've
Like-
got to change his books when they put them on screen. And I'm like, you're not a better writer than Stephen King. Stop
Yeah.
it. Just stop it.
I just have to say though, with Brighton Bookish, I have to admit that I have enjoyed most adaptations of Neil Gaiman's work so far more than his books. I haven't watched Good Omens. I did read the book twice, but I do prefer the movie Stardust over the book Stardust.
I agree with
do
that.
prefer Coraline, the movie, over the book Coraline. So I
I've
don't
only
know.
read Stardust and Sandman, and I've liked both of those adaptations. I like
Mm.
Stardust the movie better than Stardust the book. but
Yes.
Sandman the comics were way too special for me, but I do think it was a really good adaptation so far. So.
It's on my list. My husband and I are planning to watch the the Sandman adaptation soon. Super excited.
And I've watched Good Omens, but never read it. And it's because anything with David Tennant in it, I'll watch. That's my
I
hobby.
really
This is
enjoyed
why-
the book, but I don't think it. I just have a feeling that it probably wouldn't appeal to as many modern readers. I don't know why.
So I can't do book casts. One, I just don't watch that much too, so I don't know that many actors. But I just end up casting David Tennant as too many people. I'm like, crap. There's only one David Tennant. He can't be all these people. What's going on?
I'm having something like that with Live Ship Traders in my head. It's like all actors from that show, Black Sails. It's like all actors from that. It makes no sense, Mike. It's not
That's
what she's
okay.
describing, like at all. It's like
It's your version of the book. It's different from everyone else's. Everyone read a different book from everyone
think
else.
it's
Your
because it
version,
gives
they all
me-
look like those actors.
It gives me Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island vibes, and Black Sails was just a continuation of Treasure Island. So great show, by the way. If you guys haven't watched
What
it.
about you, Josh? Do you watch adaptations usually, or are you because you're so busy as a teacher?
Yeah. Well, certain ones I prioritize. Like I did watch House of the Dragon, loved it. Did watch Rings of Power. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, I watched some, but it's not very many. Like I have kept up with a lot of the Star Wars, but I'm like so far behind. I just finally finished Book of Boba Fett. So I'm probably a year, at least a year behind
at all, was it?
Yeah, that one wasn't very good. I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka show because I love that character. And Andor was one I want to watch because I'm seeing a lot of good reviews, but just don't have time right now. I'll get to it at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm way more behind than you are on everything. Books and shows.
Probably in between in how behind I am in Star Wars.
I have 3 hobbies: gaming, reading, and television, and I only have time to do 2 of those. And right now I've got a new God of War game, and I'm never going to stop reading. So TV's just kind of at the wayside right now.
For a second, I thought you were going to say you had 3 hobbies: reading, gaming, and Star Wars.
Well, it used to be. It used to be before the dark times, before the Empire. Yeah.
I don't do many audiobooks, but I've done some of those Star Wars books on audio.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic because they have sound effects and they have soundtrack. You got John Williams playing, and a lot of times they have multiple actors, portraying different things. And
I'm really curious.
I enjoy those. And those are easy because, like, if I do an audiobook, for me, I listen so infrequently. It takes like a 10-hour audiobook will take me like 6 weeks to get through.
Was that the Thrawn trilogy?
I haven't done that's one I actually want to read because I have heard
they're doing it on my Discord right now, and they're all saying it has like the music and the sound effects and the voice actors and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm really curious about the novelization for Revenge of the Sith. Ever since Rockio had like his top 10 sci-fi books, and that was an honorable mention.
Yeah, when I talk about Driss, he's like, "Yeah, only R.A. Salvatore I've read is Star Wars," and I was like, "Yeah, me too." Before I read Driss,
Yeah.
And Terry Brooks did one of the movies too because I just added that onto my Audible queue. He did one of the, I think he did episode 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a question for you, Josh. Can you spoiler-free elaborate on why you enjoy Unfinished Tales?
Well, I didn't enjoy all of them, but because there are a lot of them, but there are all 3 of the ages represented. There's some really good first age tales, and then some of the third age tales could have been more appendices to the Lord of the Rings, because you see stories that follow. There's a story of Gandalf telling a story to the hobbits, and there's just more of what we love from that. But yeah, so that was my favorite of all of them. But what I love most about just the Tolkien Legendarium is for me, it just shows, it enriches the world, which already was so rich to me. And it just shows that's why this is still the best fantasy world ever created, because he has all of this history, all these volumes to just really, he only told 2 stories. The rest of this was, Christopher Tolkien just publishing it, frankly. So, it just reinforces for me just the greatness of Tolkien and the world that he created. I don't think anyone's ever going to top it, frankly.
Wow. That's exciting.
Well, I was thinking like he doesn't have the biggest world, but I think he's the most detailed world.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I don't think it's that close.
Yeah.
By the way, Revenge of the Sith, I was pretty sure it was Stover, the guy who wrote like Heroes Die, which is a novel I'm really curious about because Library Ladder had a review of Heroes Die that is better than any review I've ever done. And that book sounds
Stover wrote maybe my favorite Star Wars novel in the New Jedi Order called Traitor. It's like a pivotal book in the Star Wars universe. and it
Oh, yeah.
put Heroes Die on my radar just because of how he wrote that book. So yeah, Stover's written
Heroes
some
Die.
great
Are you
Star Wars
ready? We've been hearing this a lot. Heroes Die is planned for 2023.
books. All right.
Hopefully that's a 5-year long year, you know?
I keep hearing about I remember hearing about Heroes Die because Patrick kept featuring it on his channel, saying this is the best book with the worst cover
Yeah,
ever.
the cover.
Yeah,
Horrible.
covered something else.
Uh,
Yeah.
Thing is, like, if you look at the original artwork for the cover, it's like the formatting. Whoever, like, they're like, we're gonna cover most of this art. It's painful. But like, if you actually just look at the painting, like, it's like, oh, that's not bad. And then the person who's like, we're gonna turn this painting into cover art is like, we're gonna take the worst part of that and we're just gonna cover up all the rest of it. And it's like, what are we doing, folks? It's probably the same people who decided The Expanse halfway through should switch from the title names to having the author name.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'll tell you, that's one reason I haven't jumped into Dandelion Dynasty is seeing that
Oh,
fourth
yeah.
book doesn't match. Because I look
Yeah.
at my Stormlight books and I have
them digital.
I have 3 of them that are, what are they? 3 of them, it's written this way, and then I got Words of Radiance, it's written this way. Like, come on.
Yeah, I'm
really?
2 and 2. I've got this way for Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, and then this way for Oathbringer and Rhythm.
That's why I put on those covers that that one artist sent me on Stormlight.
So,
Mm.
like,
That
Stormlight,
annoyed
at
the
least
shit
they
out of
have
me
an
so
excuse. Originally, it was this way, and then Oathbringer came out, and they were like, this word is too long.
Too
And
long.
it's one word. We can't have it like this. So Oathbringer had to be like that, and then they went back and published the new version. So Stormlight, at least I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Stormlight, I'm at least like, I can be like, okay, I can see how this happened. But like some of them, it's just like, what are you doing with your
That's
life?
why I wish they would offer to sell just the book sleeve to people, dust jacket, just to collectors, like $5 or something. Why not? Why not? But no, they like buy it again. Haha.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'll just live with my. Let's see if we can point on the screen with my mismatched ones. I don't care. Whatever.
My Malazan editions are a mess, and I'm so jealous of Josh's pristine matching.
Mine. I used to have one non-matching one. I had Tor for everything, and I accidentally bought the Bantam version of the Bone Hunters, and I just stuck with it for a while. But eventually, I was like, no, okay, we need to.
The worst
get Tor
spines I've
Bone
ever
Hunters.
seen is Dagger and the Coin by Daniel Abraham. I'll send you a picture of it on the Discord after this. It is 3 different ways it is written on those spines. They even like move the numbers around, and it's like, what are you doing? Orbit, what is wrong with you? But now that's why I was really nervous with The Expanse, because all the books were lined up perfectly, and they had that one last book, which was the collection of all the short stories and novellas. And I was nervous they were going to change that last one, but they actually did it. They actually pulled it off. I'm very proud of them. They've come a long way since Dagger and the Coin.
Everyone gives them
Yeah.
a polite clap.
Yeah. Speaking of Abraham, I'm definitely going to try to tackle. I shouldn't say definitely. I'll get in trouble. But I'm going to try to tackle Long Price Quartet next year.
That's
Alan-
gonna be
Alan
this. I'm
finally
gonna
got
start
you,
that this
huh?
year. That's the other series that I said I was gonna start this year. That's gonna be December. We're doing Shadow in Summer, December. Alan isn't here, so if I go back on that, he can't yell at me.
Every time I watch Alan's channel, I'm like, I've never read Tchaikovsky and I've never read Daniel Abraham. This is probably why Alan doesn't talk to me very much.
Well, the funny thing about it is that I was interested in Long Price Quartet before I met Alan, before I knew about BookTube. I kept seeing it in Barnes and Noble, the omnibus or full, the full bind up edition. And I kept on picking it up and putting it back. And I just wasn't sure, and it was really expensive. And then I found BookTube around that time, and everybody was like, read Mistborn, and it was cheaper. So I picked out Mistborn and went that direction. And wow, I don't regret reading Mistborn, but I really regret not picking up Long Price Quartet back then, because fortunately, Evie is a generous, she's BookTube Santa, and she sent me an edition of it. But you can't find that edition anymore. It's very expensive or very rare to find. And now
the single edition's got all of them in one book. Because I got that apparently right before they stopped selling them. So
exactly.
By the way,
can't
I'll
find
point
them.
out to Alan that I've read more Alan books this year than he's read Jake books.
Oh, yeah.
So
I've read
he
so
gets
many-
mad at me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Alan, I read Senlin this year. I read like a Discworld novel. There's one major one I'm forgetting as well.
Dude, the Books of Babel, was the ending as bad as I've heard?
No, The ending was I liked the last book. So I don't like this was one of those the last book is like slightly my least favorite of the 4 just because I think it has too many action scenes and not a lot, but Josiah Bancroft, like I would say straight up a bad action writer. Sorry, Josiah Bancroft. Please just switch to what Tolkien does. Just go like, and then they fought, this happened, move on. But I'm very confused about how Fall of Babel can be 3 stars worse than the other ones. I don't get it. I like all 4. I like the other 3 slightly more than Fall of Babel. I think they're all really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get how I do not get Hod King 5 stars, Fall of Babel 1 star. Like I don't understand the 4-star difference.
Is that Petrick?
Yeah, I mean, so that's Kyle and Petrick. They both, and I mean, I'm not saying like they're lying. I just often when people dislike a book, I'm like, okay, I can see why they think that. For this one, I don't. I'm not saying that's dishonest. That's just I was surprised by how like good Fall of Babel because I was expecting it to be like way worse or way different, and it's like, okay, we're still doing the same stuff. I don't know what the problem
That's interesting. Yeah, and then somebody, Susanna brings up here the Poppy War that everyone hates the last book. Honestly, Petrick loves the last book,
He does.
and
I
I
like
did
it.
not like it. I was honestly not a fan of that last book. I didn't hate it, but it didn't work for me personally. I was disappointed.
I was
I'll be
disappointed in
honest.
book 2, so I didn't read book 3.
No, yeah, I say if you didn't like Rin, that's not this. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
all
that's the
about
risk.
her.
That's like the trade-off for having one point of view character is that if you like that point of view, then every chapter is that point of view.
You
But if
wanna
you
know
don't
how
like
much
that point
I
of view,
disliked Ren? I like the girl from Shadow and Bone as a protagonist better than Ren. Yeah,
Oof, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if you don't like Rin, I'm like, please skip that trilogy because
I
that's
mean,
she's
Rin
at the heart of it.
sucks, but I kind of like it's
I
like
do
you know
same
when there's
here.
a train wreck and I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is interesting. Oh, it's exploding in all these interesting and new ways. Wow, this is really these horrible decisions.
Yeah. And I also I was not crazy about Babel. And I think my biggest gripe right now about that is I did not like Babel because I didn't think it was very well executed. Although
You're talking about R.F. Kuang? Babel?
yeah, same author.
That's probably gonna get read in my month of stand.
Well, we were just talking about books of Babel. I wasn't sure if we were going back.
Oh
to
yeah.
That's I
Yeah.
think the real reason like Alan holds a grudge towards Babel is now that people associate that word with R.F. Kuang instead of Senlin.
Oh, that's
This
right.
is my theory.
So it's so funny because when I was reading Babel, Alan was constantly messaging me little screenshots of people saying, I can't breathe anymore because Babel exists.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Because I read
Yeah,
this
that's
book.
that's the people who are like, I now split my life into two
Yeah.
halves. The half from before I read Babel and the half from after I read Babel.
Yes.
And Alan is just like, what's going on?
The most hyperbolic
Hoping
statements.
that's
ever.
hyperbole. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't get it because I like her as an author.
Mhm.
I liked Poppy War. It was fine. I liked Babel a lot. But the one thing I don't get is I don't connect with her characters at all.
No, I didn't know.
And I keep seeing people say, oh, like End of the Poppy War just wrecked me or End of Babel just wrecked me. And like Babel, there's some deaths and I was just like, okay. I
Yeah.
thought thematically it was fantastic, but I don't connect with her characters at all.
I'll say I thought the first page of Babel was pretty damn good. I've read page 1. Good first page.
Got a lot of good. I think thematically there's a lot of great things about imperialism and race, and there's a lot of good in there. And I think she was a good person to tell this story, but had I think a more skilled author that could help me connect with this main character, I think it could have been a powerful book. But I think it was very good, but not great.
Yeah.
It's also like most people who are R.F. Kuang's age are not being published because they're getting rejected by everyone and not even like getting a personal rejection. Let me check how old R.F. Kuang is. It's insane.
Well,
It's
the thing
insulting how young she is.
The thing
and
I
how
didn't care
successful
for
she is.
with
She's
Babel,
26.
the thing I didn't care for with Babel was I just felt like she was so heavy-handed with like colonialism is bad. This is wrong. And I'm like, yes, I know.
Can we
I
just
just
one
felt like
sec,
it was
get
so
over it, like-
heavy-handed with what she was trying to tell us with the themes Like just no subtlety whatsoever, no trust in her readers, a lot of telling without showing, to the point where she even footnotes the characters. They didn't really have a life at Babel because they didn't really interact with other students at Babel. I'm like, why didn't you do a scene where you show us this happening? So I don't, that was my problem with it.
But also, can you imagine being 26 and having a master's degree, studying for your PhD, and having sold 4 best-selling novels? Imagine me in the next 3 years. I have to get a master's degree, start my PhD, and get 4 best-selling novels.
Get to work.
Yeah.
No,
You can't do that with how many books you've got scheduled for 2023, man. You're not gonna have time.
If 2023 is as long as I need it to be to read all these books, I might have time to do all those things.
And she's brilliant. I don't think anybody.
So
can
I'm
argue
really
otherwise.
curious to see what like 45-year-old R.F. Kuang writes.
Yes.
Because like right now where she is at, most people are at the we're getting rejected and not getting published. And think of how much, like, you know, if you ask like, hey, Erickson, can I read something you wrote at the age of 24? He'll be like, or Gene Wolfe, can I can I read what you were like? They'll be like, no.
Don't read any of my essays that I wrote at 24.
Yeah, and meanwhile, R.F. Kuang's just like, yeah, they're published, they're bestsellers.
That's a good point.
I'm really curious to see like what 45-year-old R.F.
I don't
Kuang
know.
looks like
Stephen
in terms
King
of
wrote Long Walk when he was 18, and it's freaking amazing.
Yeah.
He's a
I'll just, you know, Sarah said that in her wrap up. She brought up a really good point about that. She said, I really wish that R.F. Kuang had just waited a little later in her career to write this book. Like it was probably too close for her. Like it was clear that she probably had some experiences at Oxford, and that's coming through the book. But it felt like it maybe needed a little bit more distancing, a little more maturity. I don't know. I know that's a really mean take. I know the book spoke to a lot of people, so I don't mean to hammer on it so hard.
You know who I'm excited to see what she writes next is Fonda Lee.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because I know she's writing a sci-fi story, and she says she's interested in writing a horror story too. So yeah, I'm excited to see what she does. Really, really great character work, and I know Joanna quit the series, so I had to bring it up.
I did, you know, I did not love the first book, Jade City, but I was able to appreciate certain things she did with character work. I did think she did some really good, subtle things with character work that, you know, I could appreciate. It just didn't meet my expectations.
We all have those series of people. Like I loved Empire of the Vampire. That's probably another reason why Alan doesn't talk to me. You know, so,
Probably the case.
we all have those authors that just don't work for us. It's normal.
Part of when I went into Jade City, I was like, everyone had like freaked out about it. I was expecting it to be like pretty good. I just for some reason I was like, I just don't believe this is like one of the best things ever. And then I read it and I was like, oh, I think this is really good. I don't think it's the best thing I've ever read, but like, I think it's solidly like really good.
See, that's me with book 3. I think it's really good, but everybody acting like it was like a life-changing book. I was like, guess I'm not seeing it, you guys. But I did really like it. It's one of those that in hindsight, the arrow is definitely pointing up on that 3rd book.
I might try it again someday. I just wonder, I don't know why I didn't connect with it. And I also wonder but I can't say that. I was going to say, I wonder if it, for me, is just a struggle getting immersed in urban fantasy and guns and fantasy. But then again, I liked The Dark Tower, and that has urban fantasy in it. So I just don't know.
I will say, the reason I like 2 and 3 more than Jade City, and the reason I was interested by Jade City the entire time, Jade City did not get like super strong like emotions out of me.
Yeah.
Where and I thought there was like the next 2 did. I thought the characters in Jade City were extremely well fleshed out and like well written. I did not find like the scenes where like they were being emotional. Like I didn't also feel like a kind of the shadow of those emotions as I do with like character writers.
I wish she made it like 5 books instead of doing what she did with book 3.
I know Jade City is one of the most successful final books ever. I still want to live in the alternate universe where it was 400,000 words.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Jake, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but hashtag Hilo did nothing wrong. There we go.
Well, Hilo did do things wrong, but he's still my favorite character in the series. He's as a person, he did things wrong, but
I do want to
In
read
a
Godfather.
small
though.
world, he did
Yeah.
nothing wrong.
Godfather's great. You should definitely read
Godfather's freaking brilliant. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I love the
2023. I'm
movies.
kidding. Probably like
2023. All
No,
right.
we need 2023 to be like.
So Jake
being
City
sent-
or The Godfather? Any
Oh,
preference?
Godfather is just That's I think that's something that everyone should. I feel embarrassed as much as I love that movie that it took me until this year to read that book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think about the expectations and it met them.
I remember my mom, I think my mom read that and told me that the horse head scene was even worse in the book. I don't know.
And the thing is, like that's in the first like 40 pages of the book too. So yeah, it's a tone setter.
I've let you
Yeah.
down, Mike, because I just checked and I hadn't clicked want to read on The Godfather, so I've just done it now.
That's all right.
I know. I want to read
You
that.
like me and put it on an Excel spreadsheet. I know you're a spreadsheet guy.
I have a Google spreadsheet for the books for the series I've read. I like me some spreadsheets.
People all the time. How do you keep organized? And I was like, I got Notepad on my phone. I
Yeah.
hope they organized. I was like, I'm
pretty old
Why the hell?
school and I have a journal.
I know she's got
but-
this nice handwritten journal and stuff. I'm like,
I don't know. It just makes me happy. So.
Excel spreadsheet all the way.
hey, what's your all-time favorite character? All four of us.
Oh, that's a
Oh.
It's chivalry farseer. Don't have to
Same.
think twice.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's too hard.
Which is funny because if you'd asked me after live ship who were your top 10 Realm of the Elderlings characters, Fitz might have been like 12. So, and now he's one all time. So,
Yeah, no
I
question.
did love Fitz though in Farseer. I will say that I did really connect to him in Farseer.
And then
No,
I
yeah, that's
reread
why I love
Farseer.
Assassin's Apprentice. When everybody else is like, Assassin's Apprentice not that good. I'm like, really, that's my favorite. Wow, weird. So, but I love coming of age. That's always
then
gonna work. for me.
then when I reread Farseer, I was like, oh, Fitz is really going to separate himself from the pack here. All right, Mike, who you got? You wanna?
I have no idea. This is such a loaded question for me. It's like, is this because it's someone that I could relate to? I mean, it's going to be a Stephen King character. It's just which one, I love Larry Underwood from The Stand is one of my favorites ever, just because I've always said that I felt like if I ever made it big, the world would end like, the next day. That would be my luck, really. Like right when you make it big, the world ends. That's kind of what happens with Larry. Or I really love Ben Hanscom because I was the fat nerdy kid in junior high, moved to a new place, lost all the weight that summer, and life completely changed. Things like that. So I don't know. It'd probably be Ben or Larry from Stephen King. I don't know. It's a tough question.
That's too hard. Josh, do you have an answer to that?
No, mine's I'm with Jake. It's Fitz without question. Yeah.
See, and this is why I'm like, I don't know if even Darius told me, oh, take a break before you get to the Rainwild Chronicle. I don't know if I can at this point. No, it's funny about that, Darius. Is Brent on my Discord was not enjoying the first two Rainwild books. And I was like, here's going to be me. I'm really excited to read these, and I'm going to be Tawny Man. It's so great. And I'm going to start reading Rainwilds and be like, okay, maybe I can stop.
I will say there's one character in Rainwilds that if you like them, I'll do something unlikely. But that's fine. You're allowed to have everyone gets a mulligan.
There's so many characters, man. I don't know. I can say that this year, one of my favorite new characters is Derval from Warlord Chronicles, especially an Enemy of God. He just won me over so hard.
So was that your favorite book? Was 2? Because that's my favorite.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
That was the one that wrecked me the most. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny.
The dad
Both
shit
of my
too
favorite
much.
2 characters, after I'd read like 3 of the books with them as the protagonist, I would have been like, if you told me these are going to be your 2 favorite characters ever, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Because number 2 is going to Harry, Blackstone, Copperfield, Dresden.
I still haven't read Dresden Files.
Who like those 2? They're the 2 who I feel like I know them like people. And both of them, I'm like, they're like, can you stop doing all these dumb things? But they're like, I only get annoyed with them being dumb because I care what happens to them, right? Like, if I didn't care what happened to them, I'd be like, ha ha ha, you're an idiot. Like, but
yeah.
Those are my top 2, and
Yeah, there are just so many good characters out there. Like all the A Song of Ice and Fire characters, and then Malazan. I loved Karsa's journey, and it's funny with Malazan because I know people say it's not a character-driven series, and it's not in the sense you don't follow 1 or 2 or 3 characters necessarily. You follow a huge world, a sprawling world of characters. But the second half, I would say, well, actually, even in the beginning of the series, there's some amazing characters in that series that I still think about all the time. So
Also, when people talk about whether something is character driven, they often mean this is like meaning the same thing of are the characters good, which is not what that means. Character driven is like, is the story and conflict driven by who the people are? You could have a book that is totally plot driven and it could have some of the best characters ever, and vice versa. You could have a character driven book where the characters are one dimensional.
That's true.
I think
That's
about
true.
it doing like just this year, favorite new character, probably Mia from Nevernight by Jay Kristoff would be my protagonist, and Kenneth would be my antagonist.
Wow.
Life
And it's
ship.
easily my favorite antagonist in fiction.
Nice.
Easily.
I put him in the same sentence with Glocta the other day, so you know how much that means to me.
Oh, wow.
Also, for restricted to just this year, I'll take Caius Crispin, who's the protagonist of the Sarantine Mosaic by Guy Gavriel Kay. Love me some Caius Crispin.
So many good characters out there. How do you even choose? And yeah, but that's such a good point. Because like, for example, that you were saying about characters, because I've been able to like books before with flat characters. I mean, even though I was just critical of Kwang's Babel, I love the Dune series, and I know that Philip has pointed out that there's slightly flat characters in that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do love the Dune characters, and I love and I could see how that's the case, maybe like how some of the characters are more representing ideas and themes than they are really fleshed out individuals. But I love that. I don't know. I connect to that too.
See, these are great video ideas, guys. Great video ideas. Your best character that you discovered this year. You know, there you go. If you're looking for content, man, it's everywhere.
That is a good idea. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to redo my like top 10 series and top 10 characters, but you know, all you authors, you got to step up your game because it was too similar to the previous one.
Yeah.
I'm looking at everything I read this year.
Hello, Baron.
Yeah. Hello, Baron. Wow. Well, we've been going for about 2 hours and 40 minutes. I think this is good. I'm starting to turn into a pumpkin. I'll be honest.
I got a time zone advantage. It's only like 6:41 for me right now.
Oh,
wow. Yeah, you all are an hour earlier than I am.
Yeah, I'm
What
Pacific
Goodreads
time.
does is when it, for whatever reason, when you look at everything you've read for the year and it's got one book on there twice, and if you delete it, it deletes both of them that you read it.
Oh.
Goodreads
is crazy,
Goodreads,
right?
yeah.
So I find this time of year funny because right now all the videos on YouTube are Goodreads Awards reaction video, and everybody on their thumbnails like just like
Yeah, I looked at it and I was just like,
No,
Okay.
whenever I look at the Goodreads books of the year, I'm always like, these clearly aren't my people. So
let's put it this way. I think of the new releases for the fantasy ones, the only one I have read is The Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is going
is
to
John
be
Glenn
one.
even on there? Stupid.
Let's put it this way: Daughter of the Moon Goddess is going to be on one of my end of year videos, and it is not going to be on the top one.
you did that?
I did. It was part of the book club. It was. It is the reason.
You read this year was.
It is the reason why my university book club abandoned democracy, because there was a vote between Exhalation by Ted Chiang, which I was super excited for, which we did the month after anyways. The Curse of Chalian by Louis McMaster Bujold, which I also read anyways and was fantastic, and Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. And Daughter of the Moon Goddess won because it had the best cover art. And then we got to the meeting, and I was kind of worried because I didn't want to be a downer. I'm the co-founder. I didn't like it. And it's like, go around. Oh, what did everyone think of the book? No one gave it 3 stars. It's all 2.5 or lower.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, cool. We get to crap on it for an hour and a half. This is going to be fun. And it was.
I listened to that via audio, and I felt like I could handle that fantasy audio because it was YA. It is YA. I don't care what people say.
It's not shelved as YA.
It's supposedly adult. It's YA.
Yeah, Mike, if you're ever like, I need another book for my bottom list, I'd highly recommend Daughter of the Moon Goddess. The chances of you liking it are approaching 0%. Yeah.
So I don't know if it was an audiobook thing, and maybe you could tell me, Jake, but my problem with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, well, one of my problems was that I felt like the narrator, it's in first person and it's from a young girl's perspective. I don't know if it was the audiobook narrator, could have been the narrator, sounded so pretentious to me, like so pretentious.
This is the thing with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and that is it's just shelved in the wrong genre.
Yeah.
It is fully like, if it was shelved as a YA romance, it would be a good
Oh,
YA
yeah.
romance. The problem is, like, you know, it's some people like reading about, like, will there be a relationship? Will there not be a relationship? Which guy is she going to end up with? And I'm just like, I don't care. Why is this shelved as an adult fantasy?
It's a love triangle
Do
story.
the characters
It's
have
so
depth?
much.
I looked. I couldn't find any.
There's
Also,
glitter magic.
this is the only part of it that I actually thought, like, execution wise, not just like it's not the type of book I want to read wise, was like not very good. Which the premise is, it's like, okay, it's a romance and the characters are like immortals in like Chinese mythology. And you'd think that, okay, sounds more interesting, but that's never plot relevant. Like, if you changed it so they weren't and they were just normal people and who weren't immortal, like, the plot wouldn't change at all. And it actively causes plot holes because they're worried about, like, the line of succession. And I'm like, the emperor has been the emperor for 10,000 years.
Oh.
Why are we worried about this? Like, he's immortal. Anyway.
That's a good point.
So anyway, it was one of my least favorite books I read this year. Mike, you asked. The answer is probably, it could be that. It's probably The Emperor's Blades by Brian Staveley. For
That's
my
your
least
biggest
favorite.
disappointment? Wow. Okay.
No, well, that I didn't have expectations about. It's probably my least favorite book I read this year.
Yeah.
Disappointment. I always feel like the expectations are
Yeah.
implied, but
Yeah, expectations do everything. So with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, by the way, I think I would have loved it if I had the expectations. Angsty YA romance.
the thing is, if I had the correct expectations for Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I just wouldn't have read it.
Yeah. And I think I'm too old for that right now, for that kind of genre,
Like,
maybe.
if people like romance,
Thank you,
novels,
Gary. That worked. Thank you.
then they'll probably like it. Here's the thing that annoyed me. Like, I actually think the prose is good,
Yeah,
but
it is actually. I
just
mean,
the
it's beautifully
story,
Gorgeous.
character. Also,
Yeah.
it did one of the things that drives me bloody insane, which it ends with, like, here's the moral of this story, but the moral doesn't make any sense for what the actual story is. The moral is, like, it's not like it's your actions that matter. I'm like, do you know how much of this plot was driven by luck? What are
Yeah.
you talking about? What is going on? Anyway, I like most books. However, but
Sorry, we're trashing a book. Okay.
I'd like to apologize to Daughter of the Moon Goddess.
I know it is beautifully written. There are some beautiful descriptions in there.
Yeah.
I thought. Yeah.
Like, I think if it was shelved in the right genre, it's a good execution of what
Yeah.
it's trying to do.
Mhm.
I'm very annoyed that it beat out Exhalation and Curse of the Challeon, which are both excellent books. I haven't talked about Curse of the Challeon yet today. All of you should read
Sorry,
Curse of the
all your
Challeon. Curse of the Challeon rules. It's like really, really well done characters. It's a standalone, but it's it manages to, like, there's almost no action and has like methodical pacing, but it's also actually one of the tightest narratives I think I've ever read. There's so many scenes where you read it and it's like, oh, this is like a character or a setting detail. And then later it ends up being directly plot relevant. I literally do not think you can cut a scene from that book, like, without breaking the plot. Anyway.
Josh, before she kicks us off, what was your worst book you read this year?
Xenocide by Orson Scott Card.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been reading all of the Ender's Game books this year, one per month, because he finished a new one last year that is supposed to tie the Ender Quartet and the Shadow series together. And it's been just a downward trajectory all year. Ender's Game is one of my favorites. Ender's Shadow was fantastic, but Xenocide took a plot turn so bad that I actually just hate read the
What I
last
hear, that's why I'm always afraid to continue with that series, because I love Ender's Game. If you don't count rereads, because if I was counting rereads, it would be Night Angel by Brent Weeks, because, oh my God. But I'll have to say the second Cradle book was just misery to me. I have no idea why people thought that I would like that. No idea whatsoever. They were convinced that I would love it. I'm like, what have I talked about in the channel that you guys think that I was going to like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I like the concept of progression fantasy either. I'm going to try those because I got them for free on my Kindle, but yeah.
It's reading someone playing D&D. That's what it is. It's not, and it's not even that exciting.
Oh, so it's kind of like
Doesn't sound like it's something new.
Joanna, you have a least favorite book you've read this year?
You know, I'm trying to think. There've been a few that were probably least favorites. You know, it's kind of hard. I didn't hate Babel, but it was disappointing for me. And then the more time I spend away from it, the more lackluster it feels to me. So I might go with that answer. Though, I mean, I didn't think it was a bad book. I don't regret reading it. I don't regret reading anything, though, honestly.
There's a couple.
I regret trying Night Angel again.
I'll regret. Like, I didn't even talk about Emperor's Blade. I don't get it. Like,
I have those books, but that's not encouraging.
No, they're really. I just am, because the weird thing about Emperor's Blades is that I feel like I'm the target audience. Like, I feel like the target audience is totally me, and I just like, there's so many things where I read it and I'm just like, I feel like that's just like an error. Like, here's a random example. This isn't irrelevant, but there was almost every chapter I had something where I was just like, this just feels like a mistake. Like, this was just overlooked. This just doesn't make sense. And there's one, someone is like buried up to their neck for a week and they're given like a sip of water every 3 days to not die of thirst. And I'm like, that's not how dehydration works. It's not a video game. It's not like I'm dying of thirst. I had some water. It resets. You need to go to the hospital, sir. Your organs are failing. But that's just a random example. It was mostly like the main character I just thought was miserable. I don't get the appeal of them. And the actual, I feel like it's a 450-page book, and I think it should start on page 350.
Your recommends and do not recommends are batting 1,000 for me if it wasn't for Codex Alera. There we go. But no one's got a perfect record, right?
Everybody gets a mulligan. That's what I say. Almost every author I've read more than 10 books by has like one that I'm kind of lukewarm on. Everyone gets one mulligan.
So you liked Codex Alera? Is that the idea?
No, I did. To be fair, Codex Alera was one of the first fantasy series I read.
It wasn't bad. It was just.
And also, to be fair, he didn't read like the good stuff for Codex Alera. It's fine.
Yeah, it was the Malazan thing, Joanna. Oh, wait till you get to book 3. That's what it was with Codex Alera. So
yeah, that's tough.
And people that stuck it out did say that was true. So
I've heard a lot of mixed things about that series, about Codex Alera.
That's
Though
what
I
feel
have to
about
admit,
Dresden.
you all have me really curious about Dresden. I might.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's
Dresden's the same, except Dresden gets better. Dresden, like, think Dresden's just.
But see,
Sorry,
that's
so
the,
I'm
that's
weird
the thing
because
that
I read
people say about
Alera.
Dresden, right? Is that you have to keep going.
And
You
like,
have to go back to
and
play.
so it was my day. I transcended and I made the Circle of Dresden, and it predicts the future. Where stage 1 is like skepticism, like, oh, I just don't know if this is a series for me. I get why other people like it, but whatever. And then stage 2 is False Peak, which is, oh, that was a really good book. Okay, if it can keep up this quality, then like, yeah, I see what's going on. You will note for False Peak, this is where the Dresden fans will be particularly smug. And stage 3 is Loud Screaming. Loud Scream is just like, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. That was really good. And then stage 4 is Annoyance, which is you are now in the position where you love Dresden. And you think that because you used to be a skeptic, that all the people who currently are skeptics will now believe you because you were in the same position as them. But they don't believe you, because why would you? Like, it's hard to believe. Like, it's hard to believe that the person who wrote Stormfront could be like in my top 5 authors. Because guess what? Stormfront, I like it because it's fun. Stormfront isn't that good. Like, it just isn't.
Okay.
But the Circle of Dresden is true. It's not always true, obviously. It's not true that 100% of people like Late Dresden.
You're never gonna get us off of here if you get him talking about Dresden Files.
But it's usually true. It's usually true, and that is fair, Mike.
I say that as a guy who's probably got about 30 hours worth of Dresden Files content on my channel. Yeah,
I literally
that's
like
child's play. Yeah,
some of the only collabs I do is like when people who I like see reading through Dresden on like who have channels get to the end. I'm like, hey, do you want to spoiler talk about Dresden? Mike, you would have been invited, except you'd already finished when I started the channel, so there would have been a thing.
I've forgotten more than you know. So there.
I've read them a couple times. They're
Have
why
you
I
read
don't.
Dresden, Josh? Have you read any of that?
I'm in this. Okay, I'm in his skeptic phase.
That's
for
fine.
sure. I've read the first 2, but I am reading the 3rd book in December. That
No,
is
that's
one of the
okay.
things to
Skepticism.
read.
Third book was where it got good. Everybody has like a book where it took off for them. Third one was for me because that was the most, to me at the time, it felt like the most Buffy kind of book to me. And that's
Well,
why
that's what I've been hoping.
Yeah.
I want to like this series, and actually, Derry keeps telling me that I will like this series if I keep going, but I'm still in that skeptic phase.
Derry,
where-
Kyle reached stage 4 yesterday. Yeah, so Kyle, read by Kyle, he wanted to be like, he wanted to tell us all we were wrong. He was looking forward to reading Changes and being like, it's still mid. And then he's like, no, it's Changes is one of the best books I've ever read.
had
Okay.
unrealistic
Wow.
expectations, and it even exceeded that.
Yeah,
That's what was
yeah.
crazy about
He
it.
was so looking forward. Everyone thinks they're the exception, but that's fine because some of them are right. And some people trust people, but most people are like, no, I will be the exception and think Dresden stays this good. And I'm like, no, you won't, because you can recognize good books, and they're just a lot better.
I've drank this whole thing, so I'm going to go to the bathroom. But Joanna, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this.
All right, we're going to go ahead and end the broadcast. But thank you all so much for for watching and joining us. And have a great rest of your evening and keep reading.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Bye.